This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast presented by ClutchPoints, powered by DraftKings. Like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Again, the name is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and I'm joined by Matt Russell, sports betting professional and creator of The Window, available on Substack and wherever you get your podcasts. Mr. Matt Russell, we're talking week 5. Am I now allowed to say that it's October 1st? I can't believe it's already week 5. No.
You know, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no because it's still summer weather out there. You can't be like, I can't believe it's week 5 or week whatever until we hit. I gotta be wearing a hoodie. Let me put it that way.
Fair
right? Like you'd be like, oh man, the weather's turned, and all of a sudden it's week 10. It's like, yeah, all right. Still pretty nice out, man. I guess the idea is like, oh, it's week 5 when it feels like week 2 from a weather perspective. Maybe that you can kind of counterpoint with. But I don't know, like referencing like college football, just maybe because it starts so much earlier, and it feels like it starts so much earlier because it starts in August. Where I'm just like, man, like the season is going, like we are into it, and it's like, it's not October yet, right? I'm like, what's that? It's not even October, and like all these big games and these teams have all these losses. Not quite the same thing when it comes to the NFL, but man, like already so many dudes are out and injuries are ravaged. We're going to talk about a lot of these games, and a lot of the context is what are these teams supposed to be rated as if they are missing either a star player or a number of players, or in one very specific case, a number of players, including their star player. So, I guess it is just October, but that's still enough time for like everybody in the NFL to get hurt. Because as I think you and I would agree, the NFL gridiron is not for regular human beings. You and I don't want anything to do with being out there, right? It's like, why would we be surprised that guys get hurt? It's like the entire thing is a cauldron of death. So just the fact that these guys are even be able to make it week to week, I should say, and year to year for that matter, is incredible. So I don't blame them for getting injured, but God, it's wild. Week 5 and already half the league seems to be banged up.
Yeah, it is one of those things where people take for granted. Like people don't understand what they're watching when you're watching football. The economy that's going on around football, and literally we all know nothing of what we're actually watching. But a big part of that is the injuries and how dangerous this game is, and also just trying to figure out on a week-to-week basis. It's like, yeah, let's pick between these two teams where like who knows who's starting at quarterback, much less before we get to like who's starting at like right tackle. You know what I mean?
For sure. I mean, like, and if anybody ever gets an opportunity to be on the sidelines for like either an NFL game or like a big time or any pro football game, really, and any big time like college football game, you're like 15 feet away, but you're like I don't even understand what is happening 15 feet away from me. Like the speed, size, power, and like just violence of the game. You're just like, oh, should I even be allowed to stand here? Like that's the amazing part. There's so many people on the sidelines. You're just like, how aren't people getting wiped out on a regular basis? And again, that's a credit to the athleticism of NFL players as well, that they can go full speed towards the sideline and not just annihilate everybody in their path. So yeah, again, like you said, man, like it's wild out there. So the best we can do, right, is just try to figure out. And that's why we talk about like market ratings and like how this team's rated and that team's rated, because it's like, again, we'll talk about some of these, especially on Thursday night, where you're like, can you believe where this team is rated? And it's like, well, they are without half of their team. So yeah, let's get it rocking and rolling here.
For sure. And for the folks who might be new to the pod, here's what we do each and every week. I'm going to give you a pick against the spread for each and every game in the NFL. And then Matt comes in with the information and education on where the line was, where it is, and where it could be going heading into kickoff. I then try to come out with a pick on the other side with a much more informed pick. Try to play the role of the viewer. Sometimes Matt convinces me to change my pick, and other times I foolishly don't listen. But that's the joke. That's the bit. That's the show. And yeah, picking against the spread is, and especially trying to pick against the spread for every single game. Listen, I say it, tongue in cheek, but like actually that is the joke. That is the bit. And it's perfect because I feel like the people, if you listen to this pod and you understand what we're doing here in terms of just trying to talk about different things from line to line, game to game, and how these things play out. When I say, 8-8 last week, and then you look at how some of these games played out, it's just so much fun because you realize
Totally.
how easily 10-6 becomes 8-8, like very quickly, like just on like a couple plays. And that's just the fun of the season. So yes, another 8-8 week. We're still trying to get the main line back up to where things need to be here on the pod. But we push forward, we keep things moving, and of course, we start on Monday Night Football. And Thursday Night Football is really where we start. We end the week on Monday Night Football, but
We often do. Yeah.
we often do. We
Week
start
5. Week 5.
we start week 5.
Banged up.
My San Francisco 49ers, speaking of banged up, will be taking on the Los Angeles Rams. Rams 6.5-point favorites here in an NFC West showdown. And I'll say this, these teams normally play each other tough. Obviously, the rivalry between McVay and Shanahan, well documented. But this might seem a little familiar to last year's Niners matchup where like the Niners were just super banged up. They're banged up again this year. Brock Purdy, he says he sounds like he wants to play, but doesn't sound like he might play. So we could be getting Mac Jones again, which for the record, I'm not mad at. We'll discuss. But on top of that,
oh boy,
my guy Pearsall, injured last week, banged up, still questionable heading into this season. But he suffered gunshot wounds. So, who knows if he'll play or not. Tough guy.
Yeah.
Juwan Jennings, he was banged up last week as well. Like the Niners last week, their special teams was a joke. Brock Purdy did not do the job at all last week. This to me feels like a weight class matchup. And at 7 points, more than 7, I'd probably be looking at the Niners here just out of, respect to the divisional beef. But at 6.5, I got to take the Rams here. I just feel like the way that Puka and Stafford are cooking and continue to cook, I don't know if the offense is banged up as it is, Mac Jones or Brock Purdy and just basically Christian McCaffrey. I don't think you can keep up with the Rams offense and against the Rams defense, more importantly, which is a unit that I know you put me onto. I can't even lie about. You were the one singing the praises of the Rams defense. And here we are. Give me the Rams. I'll lay the 6.5 points against my own San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah. So, I mean, what does it mean for the 49ers, right? That there's 6.5, even some 7s out there starting to creep into our lives here as we go throughout the week. I'm just kind of looking to see around like how many available 6.5s really are there. What does it mean for the 49ers, right? That, obviously the look ahead line was considerably lower. It's 3.5. It's the expectation of, divisional matchup, but the Rams are better than the 49ers, and it's not that much. Then the 49ers lose that game to the Jaguars, and of course the Rams pull out an incredible cover and victory against the Colts, which by the way, I was on the Rams in that game. I can admit it. That was the wrong side.
It was very
Colts should have covered that game at the very least, right? And so, but that's just the way the NFL goes these days, right? Where you can be in a tie game late, and it used to be, all right, one team going to win this game by a field goal, and now all of a sudden, right, the explosive plays and all kinds of kicking craziness, you might end up with a 7 or even a 10-point victory.
We will get to the Colts self-destruction because the Colts did self-destruct in that game.
Yeah, was it a team thing or was it one individual player? Right, that's certainly debatable. But the well, I mean, when the guy fumbles the ball on the 1 yard line, right, you're like, oh, this is kind of a big deal. But I think it's relevant to this game because right, the Rams get credit, as we talked about even before the season, right? If we kind of thought about the Rams as a team who was the Super Bowl, is a Super Bowl contender, we were sort of thrown off by the idea of Matthew Stafford already having a back injury, in the preseason, and those ones, you never know what it's going to actually turn out to be, but it does obviously looking back kind of feel like a bit of a red herring. And so we've talked about the Rams being this team that wasn't rated like a Super Bowl contender, which, as you and I always kind of talk about, is something close to like 70 out of 100, right? You get 2, 3, 4 teams rated in that way. And so the Rams come into the season rated in the like mid to high 50s. Well, they're up to 65 now. So they're kind of, they've gotten to the point where we sort of thought, well, maybe they should be here this whole time. And that's the tricky part about sports betting and betting the NFL, is because you can be on top of things like the Rams, like the Colts. And one, they can actually play each other come week 4. And then you're sitting there going like, well, now who am I supposed to bet on if I like both of these teams? But also, if you're correct for 1, 2, and certainly 3 weeks about both of those teams, their market rating is going to go up. And you are going to now start to have to kind of chase even yourself. And so with the Rams here, now we're at 65. It's like, yeah, I kind of think that's about right. And so then you go, all right, well, what do the 49ers have to be 6.5 to 7 point underdogs in this short week divisional game where, again, both teams know exactly what the other team wants to do, right? So if the Colts were kind of confused by the usage of Puka Nacua, or the Titans a couple of weeks before that were confused by the usage of Puka Nacua, or the Eagles for that matter, right? This is a different story, right? Like Sean McVay doesn't have another playbook. He has the playbook that he uses effectively a lot of the times, but the 49ers know exactly what's going on in that playbook. But what's going on with the 49ers with regards to their rating is like a catastrophic drop, right? They're down to 43 out of 100. So that is come with the disrespect, or sort of the earned disrespect, if you will, by losing at home to the Jaguars. But the Jaguars, by the way, are like a play or two away from being 4-0 themselves, right? We have been, sort of suspicious of the Jaguars for a while, which again, we'll talk about a little bit later on. But like, it's not that bad of a loss. This wasn't a team that was a 7 point favorite over the Jaguars last week. I tried to tell you, like, this is going to be this close game, and it ended up being, going the Jaguars' way in the end. And so, like, the 49ers get sort of disrespected in this way. Brock Purdy hasn't been ruled out just yet, and maybe the assumption is that he's going to be. But if, as you say, like if you like Mac Jones as much as you like Brock Purdy, or even if it's kind of close, then what's really the downgrade, right? Because when Brock Purdy
Exactly.
plays, they are back to being rated, the 49ers are back to being rated in that low to mid 50s range, right? Now, obviously, they're probably not going to get back to where they were before the season started, where they were like 11.5 win team, and their range was like, somewhere between like 55 and 70 or 60 to 75, because Nick Bosa's not coming back, and, George Kittle, he's going to come back eventually, but like, again, it's not going to be, on a week to week basis, they're not going to be given that sort of full credit. So like I get the downgrade here, but like even just going back to, what was it, week 2, where sort of a similar situation when Mac Jones played against New Orleans. This they were rated to the point where they were 4 point favorites. Their current rating, if they were to play the Saints this week, they'd be a 1 point favorite on the road
Yeah,
against the Saints.
I
Right?
see.
Like it's a
Yeah.
pretty massive, that's a pretty massive downgrade when we already saw what happens when Brock Purdy doesn't play. And
Mhm.
obviously, the Ricky Pearsall situation is, also, obviously troublesome if he's not able to go as well. And Juwan Jennings, and, we've been doing the will he or won't he with Juwan Jennings all season long as well. And so I just think once we get to a certain point here, and I think that point is 7, where you just kind of have to grin and bear it and go, you know what, just the coaching matchup with these two teams knowing what they do. I believe it was last year, it might have been a Thursday nighter as well, where I think the
It
game was like
was
9-6. Not,
ugly,
you know what I mean? Like
ugly.
it was like a 9-6, like just a grotesque game, because it was like, yeah, man, we know exactly what you're gonna do, and you know exactly what we're gonna do. And like, yeah, I think the weather played a factor there, because I think it was kind of a rainy game. But to my knowledge, football games have been played in the rain in the past, and teams have been able to score touchdowns. So, maybe if it was a drier night, or they played it indoors the way that they're going to play this essentially indoors at SoFi Stadium, the scoring might be a little bit higher than that version of that game last year. But I think you're headed for this game that's probably going to both teams find their way to, I don't even want to say 20, because I'm not even sure either team can score 20 against
Mhm.
the other team, knowing what the other team knows about the other team. So, I think this game's really, a lot kind of, dicier as far as like scoring is concerned. And listen, the 49ers defense could be better this season, but like they're not completely without talent on both sides of the ball here, even with the injuries that they do have. And I don't see an injury designation for Mac Jones. So obviously the concern would be if Mac Jones, who is, had some injury issues in and of himself. If he wasn't going to be able to play, then I don't even know what the 49ers would be doing, because even Rourke is out, and it's like I don't know, they're just going to run that McCaffrey offense that they had to do in the second half against the Eagles a couple of years ago. I think
Don't
the
remind
market's
me of
getting a
that.
little crazy here. I think the market's getting a little crazy here. Listen, it could very well be a Rams blowout because the 49ers just don't have enough players. But at a certain point, the line just gets too high, and you have to kind of go, all right, 55-45. Can the 49ers hang in there and keep this within one score?
Mhm.
That's kind of where my mindset is. Again, we'll have to figure some more stuff out here between now and kickoff as far as who actually is playing. But, whether it's kind of a hobbled Purdy or Mac Jones, like, this line's getting a little crazy because, again, we've seen the 49ers play in this circumstance, and it certainly wasn't as bad as the current market rating suggests.
I'm gonna be very honest. Obviously, this is involving my team, and I'm trying to keep my personal feelings out of this. I've moved the line as I noticed that when I check the DK again, which I
Hmm.
do right before we record this up to 7. I'm still sticking with the Rams at -7 here. The reason just being
Okay.
I just think the Niners are too banged up, and like Brock Purdy, the problem with Brock Purdy, or my issues with Brock Purdy, will say, is when they don't have the weapons around him, he then tries to do too much. And I'm not blaming him for that, but it just doesn't go well. Right.
Hmm.
And that's not a Brock Purdy issue. That's like, that would be an anybody issue, right? I understand it. But I just think that at this point, it's a weight class thing. I just think the Rams are just better. 7 points is a lot. 7 points at home, 7 points on a short week. I know that's a lot to ask here for the Rams, but I just think this is a weight
Right.
class one, and I'm gonna hold with the Rams here at -7 on Thursday Night Football, as much as I will be sitting and rooting for my San Francisco 49ers. So take that info and take that information, you know, with
Yeah. Is he
whatever it is.
overreacting to his favorite team? Is he underreacting to his favorite team? You never know. You never know.
Time will tell. Time will tell. Time will also tell if I will be up on Sunday morning to watch the Minnesota Vikings. I'm laughing because, anyways, the Minnesota Vikings will
Yeah.
be in London to take on the Cleveland Browns. Vikings favored by 4.5 points in this one. Vikings coming off a loss in Dublin to the Steelers. Their defense really got carved up by Aaron Rodgers in the run game. A horrible start cost them. They tried to come back late. Carson Wentz almost tricked us into thinking that he wasn't Carson Wentz before inevitably proving
Yeah.
that he is, in fact, Carson Wentz. Minnesota also lost 2 linemen, which, I mean, obviously is not going to help Carson Wentz there. But down the stretch, just while this comeback was happening, you had delay of game penalties, you had intentional groundings, near picks, actual picks. Just not a good look for Carson Wentz there late. In their late comeback. So to be 4.5 point favorites here against the Browns is a tough spot. Then I flip over to the Browns and realize that
Mhm.
Joe Flacco time is over. And it looks like we're getting Dylan Gabriel in this game. And
Yeah, buddy. That's quack
it's a tough
quack.
spot for the kid to be in, but I'm going to take the Browns
Yeah.
here at +4.5 because I cannot lay 4.5 points with Carson Wentz against anybody. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
It's not going to do it.
Yeah, or even just specifically, right, the Browns defense, who had another good showing last week in another,
Mhm.
and this is again why Joe Flacco is getting benched. And we always talk about the versus anybody. It's kind of like, well, Joe Flacco was probably going to get benched for anybody, based on the fact that, like, yeah, like the offense, we keep thinking like, yeah, Joe Flacco like can do it because like the arm strength is there, and obviously like the veteran element of like knowing where the ball is supposed to go,
Mhm.
and it just isn't quite getting there. And so I'm mixed with the Dylan Gabriel thing, right? Like the idea of a quarterback in his first start going up against Brian Flores is like not something that I'm overly excited about. But Dylan Gabriel played a ton of college football, right? Going back to UCF and Oklahoma and Oregon, right? Like he was on a lot of teams, and he played a lot of football. And so what he did with those teams, he did two things that I think are going to be beneficial. One is he got the ball out of his hands. right? Like at Oregon, particularly, it was like, let's just get it in to the hands of our playmakers. And as we've talked about before, right? Like the Browns have a fair amount of offensive playmakers, right? Like, does Jerry Jeudy stink? Like, yeah, Jerry Jeudy probably stinks. But like every once in a while, Jerry Jeudy will make a catch and be able to get down the field a little bit. But the other guys, the younger guys on that team, I have high hopes for. But again, like the quarterback play just has to improve. And then the other thing that Dylan Gabriel can do is he can run. So you go from Joe Flacco, who's just an absolute target back there from a pass rush perspective, to Dylan Gabriel. And again, it's very similar to the Jackson Dart scenario from last week that you'll recall we were pretty locked in on as far as just adding a mobile element back there. It's 2025, man. Your quarterback has to be able to run. He doesn't have to be the fastest guy in the universe. He doesn't have to be the biggest guy in the universe, right? But he has to be able to run because that's going to open up things for the running back. In this case, Quinshon Judkins, who's done nothing but been really good for the Browns so far. But when the play is either Joe Flacco just sits in the pocket or hands it off, like that's a pretty good, easy offense to kind of go up against here. So it's interesting. You mentioned the number of 4.5 because you're going off DraftKings lines. The other books are honestly taking their sweet time in adjusting for this. And I kind of thought that this number was initially created on the idea that Joe Flacco might be getting benched. Because I too think that like getting over a field goal with the Browns and their defense against a Vikings depth chart that as you mentioned, right? God, Donovan Jackson out, Brian O'Neill out, Ryan Kelly, the center, questionable, and they just got Christian Darrisaw back from his I believe it was an ACL or a leg injury of some kind from last year against the Rams on that Thursday night game that we've talked about before. So it's just like, well, that's not ideal for going up against Myles Garrett and the Browns defense. And JJ McCarthy is currently listed as doubtful. It would be, I don't know, funny if he came back and immediately had to go behind a mangled offensive line the way that the Vikings had. But again, it's not like the Vikings aren't without their question marks, right? Right down to Carson Wentz, who's pulling, Kaiser Soze after his first game, making people believe that like Carson Wentz didn't exist. And it's like, no, Carson Wentz very much existed last week, throwing the interceptions that he threw. And so I think you've got yourself a high variance game here where either one of these teams can win. Obviously, the question mark is, can Dylan Gabriel come in and play like efficient football, get the ball out of his hands? It's not like, listen, we're going to use an example in his same quarterback room. It's not like Shedeur Sanders, who in college was required to kind of do a lot of running around, make plays, street ball, football, right? Where's Travis Hunter? Where's any number of the really quality wide receivers, fast wide receivers that he had down the field? Dylan Gabriel was like 1, 2, boom, it's out. And then we're also going to run some running plays that involve the threat of the quarterback run. And so again, it comes down to like Stefanski, and you go like, are we trusting Stefanski here? Over the years, it's been constant. Like, all right, we got to do this with this quarterback, this with that quarterback. Like, we're doing the best we can. Like, Dorian Thompson-Robinson's involved, but like, at least it's not Deshaun Watson. Whether it's them drafting Gabriel ahead of Shedeur or, however you want to sort of frame it, like, I think they have hope for Dylan Gabriel to be able to get the ball in the places it needs to go and provide the threat that it needs to be. Hopefully he doesn't get fooled too much by Brian Flores. But honestly, when it comes to like turnovers and the threat of, I think Carson Wentz is just as capable as Dylan Gabriel is of essentially throwing away this game. The betting market is always going to like the fact that Minnesota has played overseas already and will be adjusted to all of that sort of thing. But I think that's baked into the line as well, right? I don't think it's a secret that Minnesota is playing overseas on back-to-back weeks. So, yeah, like 4.5 is great. Like you can hop on that over at DraftKings. I would certainly do that.
Yeah, the 4.5 is an interesting number there for sure. And it's funny because the Joe Flacco line, like, I don't know what the difference would be between the Joe Flacco line and the Dylan Gabriel line, or, the fact that the having to start the rookie in London, right? Like, I wonder how much of a part of the plan this was thought of before, you know what I mean? Like if before they took the trip out, like last week, were they thinking there's a potential that we might have to go to Gabriel while we're in London? You know what I mean? Which, like, is that ideal?
And that's what I mean about, yeah. Yeah, no, that's what I mean about the point spread being like, well, it's 3.5 seemed high when it was Flacco. So
Mhm.
maybe the assumption was, or sort of, a little birdie, sort of indicated to odds makers that this might be sort of the case, right? Because like there's nobody more informed on the sort of goings on, right? There's a
Exactly.
large
Yeah.
network attached to market making, odds makers where
Mhm.
it's not just off of power ratings, right? And again, having watched the Vikings, I mean, the Vikings should be worth mentioning, right? That like after beating the Bengals, the Vikings got a massive boost. We talked about it last week where I was sitting there going like, God, the Vikings are getting out to like 2.5 points here, and like man, it doesn't really add up other than the fact that like the Vikings won with Wentz. And if you're going to upgrade the Vikings because Wentz is better than JJ McCarthy, then I guess that's kind of just what we're doing here. And, turned out that the Steelers were, probably the right side in that game. And so now the Vikings go back down to kind of just an average football team. And I think that's just kind of all the Vikings are going to be
Yeah.
this season because of the quarterbacking situation, which has only been exacerbated by Sam Darnold having success in Seattle, is that Carson Wentz and JJ and the current edition of JJ McCarthy are not as good as Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Full stop. Right. And so like you can't be a above average team if you're not getting decent quarterback play. And the Vikings haven't gotten decent quarterback play. And there's only so much that Kevin O'Connell can do, as much as everybody kind of just considers him this like amazing guru or whatever. Again, injuries to the offensive line, all of these sorts of things can be high variance, weird stuff, classic London overseas. Like what happened in that? What's going on now? Who's missing what kick? Multiple interceptions probably coming incoming from these guys. Again, if Dalen Gabriel can just keep the mistakes to a minimum here, I think the Browns win the game outright.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to watch that one again for sure, especially seeing how Dylan Gabriel had to be part of the plan at some point this season. Just the fact that it came this early, we'll see how that plays out. And Stefanski, as you mentioned all the time,
Sure.
is a really good coach. So we'll see how that plays out. We go to the Broncos, who will be heading to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Eagles, 3.5 point favorites here. And I think the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, to say that they had an interesting time against the Bucs last week, I don't even know how you phrase that. I don't know how, Jalen Hurts can have the complete opposite game than he had the week before, right? In which he just flip-flopped
Right.
halves. And
Yeah.
last week he was just good in the first half and had 0 passing yards in the second half. I don't know how that's
Zero pass
possible.
completions.
0 pass completions, my bad.
Yeah.
That's
Couldn't. Yeah.
incredible. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
But they keep winning. And I
That's
will
right.
say I love the fake tush push. Is it they haven't lost
Sure.
in a calendar year? Like it's just weird, right? But it's the same old story.
Yeah.
AJ Brown still tweeting like really interesting quotes. Lots going on in Philadelphia. The Broncos side of things, I mean, an interesting performance on Monday night, but I don't know how much I'm going to give to them versus giving to the Bengals just doing absolutely nothing. Either way, the three
Yeah.
and a half, I'm going to lean on the 3.5. That hook is, I'm going to be the sucker for the hook here, and I'm going to be on the Broncos plus 3.5 here, just because the Eagles offense just tends to, take a half off. So
Right.
I'm
Sure.
gonna take the points here and Broncos plus 3.5.
Yeah, so I mean, it's obviously a matchup between two pretty good teams, right? And the thing
Very
is like
good teams.
everybody's down on yeah, and everybody's down on the Eagles, and obviously they come close to losing against the Rams. I probably could have or should have. We don't need to rehash that. If I sat here and told you that the Eagles were definitely going to get a special teams kick block touchdown,
Every week.
you'd be like, well, that's well, just like even if I just said that, right? Like it's like a matter of fact, like just put them down for 7 points via a blocked kick, you'd be like, well, that's quite the prediction. And I can't do that because that would be an insane thing to say. But yet, that is essentially the difference.
Yeah.
As you talk about the Hurts stuff, it's like, well, it's because it's game script, and the Eagles got their blocked kick touchdown in the first few minutes of the game this past week, and they waited to do it in the last second of the week before that, right? And so instead of needing to throw like they did against the Rams, they didn't necessarily need to throw against the Buccaneers. And of course, the Buccaneers almost come back to win that game. Your man's Baker Mayfield throwing that interception that was very much like an old school Baker Mayfield deal where he's running around and he looks and he's like, I got this. And it's like, you definitely do not got this. Stop throwing it to the other team. So it's so funny because, again, we do all this stuff from a market analysis perspective, right? And the Broncos get a bump for hammering the Bengals. They were obviously rated pretty high, just to be a 7.5 point favorite in that game. I think a lot of that had to do with more just people being down on the Bengals. And again, we'll get to sort of how down the market is on the Bengals in a second. But the
Oof.
market's down on the 4-0 Philadelphia Eagles.
Interesting.
This
Okay.
like the Eagles are rated as a Super Bowl contender, right? As you would expect, right? They were around 70
Mhm.
out of 100, and now again 4-0. You'd think like 70 at least. 65 is the number that I kind of have estimated for them in this game. And
Okay.
it's like, yeah, because AJ Brown's complaining and like the defense is sort of only okay. And just and like you even said, right? Like the 3.5 like feels really attractive to take Denver getting the hook. And so, and I feel that way too. Like my first instinct was, oh, Denver could win that game. But like again, if you weren't so sort of spooked by the Eagles and you kind of even just put them not even necessarily at 70, but like 68 or 69, you'd have Philly minus 4.5, minus
Okay.
5 in this game. So I think kind of like in a technical sense, like the value is actually on the Eagles. Now, again, they kind of defy all logic in a bunch of different ways, right? Because you're sitting there watching them play and you're just like, I don't know, man. Like AJ Brown's not doing anything. Jay Smith isn't doing anything. Saquon's not, not gonna have 2,000 yards rushing this year. Like I don't really know what I'm supposed to take away from all of this. And so it's part of the deal is like, is the betting market just kind of right and ignoring the fact that they're 4-0 and downgrading them despite that?
Mhm.
Or is there just value on the Eagles because this downgrade is largely unnecessary, right? So that's the kind of thing that I have to parse through. I think the Broncos are just kind of are what they are. I don't love, right, the short week traveling to cross country to Philadelphia
No.
element in all of this. We talk, I talk all the time about the idea of like, are we going to get the high end of your range or the low end of your range, like what you're capable of, right? I think the Broncos were pretty accurate on what their range is, right? They're 50 to 65. There are going to be some games where it's like, yeah, is this team like right around league average or just barely above that league average? And then there are going to be games where you're like, man, this team like could be that playoff contender, even potentially a Super Bowl contender, a dark horse Super Bowl contender. I don't know that going across country to play Philadelphia after a Monday night game where you just hammered a team and it looked really, really easy is the spot for Denver to be able to, honestly, we talk weight classes all the time. It's a pretty big weight class jump, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Chargers were the sort of the toughest game that they had to play
Mhm.
in front of a ton of Denver Bronco fans. I don't think you're gonna get a ton of orange in Philadelphia, even if the fans are a little bit bummed out with the way that the Eagles are playing. So yeah, man, this might be kind of a tricky one where a lot of people are kind of diving in here on the Broncos, getting the hook, like feeling good after watching them play. And then you get to Philadelphia, and maybe it's just not all what it's cracked up to be for Bo Nix, and they're not just giving the ball to J.K. Dobbins so that he can get 100 yards, which is like apparently a big deal in the Sean Payton era, getting him 100 yards for the first time. Like, what is that? Like, who cares? Like, just kind of weird stuff in that
Yeah.
department. So, yeah, man, I'm a little bit concerned because every time that people kind of bash the Eagles, they go, no, like we are that team. It's
Mhm.
kind of the same thing that the Chiefs do, right? It's like anytime the Chiefs, by and large, get rated below kind of the range or the where they're sort of accustomed, they come back and they play a pretty good game. And so I kind of think this might be the case for the Eagles in this one.
My one thing, and I'm almost there. I'm almost there. But the one thing
Mm,
I'm questioning here is more so I think Denver's defense is still pretty good, but the Eagles'
for
offense,
sure.
when they do what they're supposed to do, and I know that sounds crazy, but the Eagles'
Yeah.
offense is really good,
Yeah.
right? And it's like it works on this level of whatever you try to stop, we have a counter to that. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
this thing where
Yeah.
you're right, and the Eagles are the better team. This is a weight class matchup. It's just a matter of like is it game planning? Like, how do you go a whole second half and your offense looks like that, right? Like that should have been a blowout victory, and yet Baker's running around, barely keeping the team in it. They had two busted plays, right, against the Eagles that really
Yeah.
kept them in that game, which we'll get to because the Bucs game is next. You know what? You know what? You talked me into it. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening. Picks being
Wow. Okay.
changed. I know it wasn't. Sometimes this happens. I know you get surprised because it's not even your. It might not even. It's not like you're telling me, "Hey, change the pick." So it's like funny for
Yeah.
you at
There's
certain
times I'm,
points
I'm
where
like
like
banging on the table. You're like, no. And then there are other times I'm like, maybe. And you're like, you know what? You're right. And I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I am right.
it happens sometimes, right? That's just how it happens. But
Yeah.
this is one where we're
Yeah.
gonna switch because it is the weight class thing to me is super important. But I also think on top of that, um, Nix will not be able to do what Baker was doing last week, where Baker was just running
Right.
around doing the most Baker Mayfield stuff to keep that game close and giving his playmakers chances to make plays. Bo Nix, I don't know. Bo Nix is more liable to like Bo Nix the game, if that makes sense. If you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, right? Like,
No, for sure.
um, the pick is switched. Eagles
Okay.
-3.5.
Well,
That's a
there you
pick.
go.
It's a tough one there, but we're rolling with it.
What side note? What would the number like? We
Mhm.
like a lot of times it's like, okay, Denver. Like, what's the Denver's opponent? Like, oh, he's their best. Do they have a good receiver? And then you go, you're like, all right, he's got to deal with Patrick Surtain, right? So it's kind of an automatic under from like a yardage perspective
Mhm.
on whomever that might be. Given the fact that against non-Patrick Surtain cornerbacks, sometimes AJ Brown is just not remotely involved in the game plan. Like,
Yeah.
what does the yardage number have to be for
Hmm.
you to like not take the under on AJ Brown yardage, knowing that like,
That's
okay, they can
fair.
just
Yeah.
run gassers with AJ Brown and Patrick Surtain, and like the Eagles be like, yeah, let's just play 10 on 10
Yeah.
on offense, right? And you play 10 on 10 on offense, and you're playing for 9 yards essentially for a
Mhm.
first down before busting out the TP. Which I'm now calling it, by the way. I'm
Or
no
the
longer
fake
calling it
one.
tush push.
The fake one was a
I'm calling it
great. That
TP
was a great
or the
counter.
fake TPs. Yeah, fake
Amazing.
TPs, which I don't even know what that is. But yeah, like so yeah, what does the number have to be where it's like AJ Brown could have literally like I mean, he's had games where it's like 2 targets, 1 catch, nine
Yeah.
yards. It's like what does the number have to be? Like you can't set that thing low enough, I don't think, for me to not take the under. And listen, he might get a catch, he might get a big long catch. Who knows? Right? I'm just saying, like probability wise, right? Like he
Yeah.
has to be in the like 50s because he's AJ Brown. But
Mhm.
like, man, how's that gonna work?
Yeah, it is interesting, right? Because literally you could tell me any outcome for the Eagles offense from week to week, and it can't be surprising at this point because we've seen it all,
No.
right? We've seen it all.
Yeah.
So we're hoping for the good Eagles offense this week as the pick has been switched. We go to the aforementioned Baker Mayfield and his Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who will travel to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. And the Seahawks, 3.5 point favorites. This one was a tough one for me because at first, much like the game above that we just did, it's a 3.5 point spread. The lean obviously would be to take our guy Bake to cover the 3.5 points. But upon further review,
Yeah.
and we just kind of talked about it, that was a really ugly game against the Eagles. And I think
Mhm.
I mentioned the two busted plays that went the way of Tampa Bay to keep them in that game. That's one of those things where the difference between, seeing the final score, seeing how the game played out versus like actually watching a game and being like, wait a second, if those two busted plays don't happen, did they just get blown out by the Eagles? Now, of course, the
Right.
Eagles aren't the Seahawks, and I get that, but I still just think too many
Mhm.
mistakes. The O line is banged up, too much on Baker's shoulders. Now you're heading to Seattle. I just think Seattle, they played when? Last Monday? No, when Seattle play? Last Thursday, sorry. So
Thursday night.
Seattle's coming off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Seattle's coming off an extended rest here. They're at home. We should be getting a pretty good version of Seattle. And I like their defense. You mentioned Sam Darnold earlier, and he's looking solid with that running game as well. And JSN is doing work. It's tough,
Totally.
but I'm laying the 3.5 points here with the Seahawks.
Yeah, hard to argue. And I think you touched on it, right? You kind of found your way into that as far as like I mean, the Buccaneers have had 2 straight home games,
Mhm.
which is nice for them. Would have been nicer if they went 2-0. But it's funny, right? Like they have the home field advantage. Those Florida teams have the home field advantage because of the heat, right? And the expectation is like they're more used to the heat. You saw part of Philadelphia kind of falling apart there, particularly on broken plays, is like maybe just whatever percentage points of just being kind of exhausted, having to deal with that heat last week, where you're just kind of like, man, like this is brutal in fourth quarter. And again, like Baker makes a couple of mistakes there that doesn't allow Tampa Bay to come back. But like also Tampa Bay had to play in the heat the last 2 weeks. And so like, yeah, they were probably better accustomed to it in the moment for those two games. But we had those are two games that came down to the wire, right? Even the Jets game
Yeah.
was a stressful finish. And so like there's some mileage that's kind of been added up there with those two like hot weather type of games. Whereas Seattle, as you just mentioned, right, like have the extra time here with the bye week, got to go to temperate Arizona indoors. Obviously a quote unquote heated matchup, metaphorically speaking, but like, having that extra time off, I think is really critical here. You've also seen like as the injury bug, starts to really mount here, like we've got Bucky Irving now potentially questionable
Yeah.
and like wearing a boot on his left foot and using crutches at Wednesday's walkthrough practice.
Oof.
As a Bucky Irving fantasy football manager, don't love that. Nope. Nope, don't like that. So they've tightened things up with the offensive line, right? Tristan Wirfs is back. Everybody can kind of move back into the correct position, if you will. So, like, that's a good thing. But again, this is another deal where the market, I kind of think, I don't want to, conspiracy is probably not the right word here, but like, we know what we're doing here, right? Like, we know that when we see a +3.5,
Yeah.
that's on, the sort of north side of a key number.
Mhm.
And so there's almost an invitation to be like, whoa, Tampa Bay, like a pretty good team, right? They won their first three games, like in that game last week, +3.5. It's very similar to the Broncos Eagles game where
Mhm.
you're like, oh my God, they're just going to give us 3.5 points? Like, is it my birthday? Because you and I see so often when the number's 2.5
Yeah.
and 1.5, right? Where it's like, yeah, we know this team is favored, but like, we're all not going to give you a full three,
Yeah.
right? And now all of a sudden they're going to give us 3.5 and be like, come on in here. The water's warm with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's like, I don't think I don't want to get in that van. Like, stop offering me candy here. I'm not getting in your van. And so again, like you look at it, and again, especially somebody who likes to take the points, likes the underdog, et cetera, et cetera. I just go like, am I being kind of dragged into the van here with a team that like I don't know how much juice they necessarily have left in the tank after a couple of like really hot weather down to the wire type of games. When you go to Seattle, right? Again, people are looking at Seattle like, this team's not like really that big of a deal. But it's like, what's not to really like about
They're
Seattle so far,
solid.
right? The defense has been really, really good, and the offense has been, as you mentioned, solid as well. And they're starting to, um, sort of have more guys, right? They got a couple of tight ends that they're now working into the mix, right? And like neither of the running backs are like really like getting you super pumped, but like there's also like a possibility at any given moment any one of those guys can kind of crack one. And obviously JSN has become this like, borderline burgeoning superstar type guy. And so, yeah, man, like I don't think sportsbooks are dumb here. I do see that the Buccaneers have taken a bit of a hit in their market rating, right? And so if our preseason range here for the Bucs was 45 to 60, and they've largely kind of hung out in the 52, 53 range, which would be sort of the average in between those two numbers, their market rating here sort of suggests that the Buccaneers are expected to play at a slightly below average level at 49 out of 50.
Mhm.
And so if there wasn't really reason to kind of believe that that could be the case, then I would be like value, value, value on the Buccaneers. But intellectually, I know that like, there's a possibility here that like they are going to play on the low side
Yeah.
of their range. We might get a 45 or a 46 out of the Buccaneers this week because of, as you mentioned, some of the injuries and certainly the game situation. And so sometimes the market, if as long as you're following along with the market and understanding, how the market's moving as far as rating and stuff is concerned, however you do that, I think it's kind of important because you then get these little hints that like odds makers kind of think like this is not the game for the Buccaneers in the same way that like maybe this isn't the game for maybe the Eagles aren't as good as their 4-0 record necessarily suggests, but because the Broncos come off of a high profile win,
Mhm.
They don't get that sort of drop off from going across the country that maybe the Buccaneers do because of just the circumstance with, again, like I said, the injuries and the games that they've played most recently. So yeah, man, I think stay out of the van here. Maybe this is Seahawks minus the 3.5.
Yeah, it's tough with these 3.5 lines, and I know it's weird me saying this as we head into our next game that's gonna be a 3-point spread. But overall, there's just not a lot of
Hmm.
3-point spreads anymore. Whereas I feel like there are a lot
Yeah,
more 3-point, just flat 3-point spreads. And week to week, we're seeing more 2.5s and more 3.5s by a large margin. And I think that part
for
has
sure.
to be remembered because before it would be, oh, we're getting the 3.5, got to take 3.5. And now it's like, as you described it, it's like, wait a second here.
Right.
Hold
Yeah.
on. Something's up. But yeah, I'm on the Seahawks there at the 3.5 points. As we keep it moving, though, to our next game, and I mentioned, and 3-point spread, it's the Chargers who are at home
Yeah.
and laying the 3 points. Um, they are hosting the Washington Commanders, and it looks like Jaden Daniels is expected to play in this game, but the line, I'm
Well,
still kind of thrown by this a little here because, I feel like people like to bet on Jaden Daniels, and you would think that maybe this line would look a little different if this was a for sure Jaden Daniels on the road against the Chargers -3. But I say I like despite what happened last week,
okay.
with the Chargers, right? I still like the
Mhm.
overall, you know, institution of the Chargers. I think it was just a bad matchup for them against Herbert got banged up. He had to throw the ball a lot against a Giants defense that I think is really, really good. That I know you've been talking about from the start of the season, that now we're seeing this Giants defense and the damage that they're able to do on a week to week basis and the names that they have on that defense. Just, you're under pressure as a quarterback. So if I remove last week's game, and I know that sounds crazy, but bring an upright Justin Herbert to take on a Commander's defense that is
Mhm.
nothing like the Giants defense at all,
Fair. Fair.
right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at this 3 points, and I'm a little easier to lay the 3 points here because I just don't think the Commanders defense is that good at all. And,
Right.
you know, I know Mariota getting out of there, Jane Daniels coming back. It'll be all right, but there might also be some rust there. Who knows? We'll see. But I think the Chargers are just the better team. I think they'll bounce back from a tough showing last week, and Herbert will have an easier time. Maybe there'll be more balance in their offense as well, and they'll be able to run the ball, take some pressure off of them. Give me the Chargers -3 in this one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously the key here is does, Jaden Daniels play because we had a really interesting circumstance, another really interesting market related circumstance last week where when you and I spoke, it
Mhm.
was Commanders like -1.5 at Atlanta. And I was like, well, if Jaden Daniels plays based on kind of the rating here, like there's still some room to maneuver here. Where if Daniels plays, this number I think could go up to 3, and that would be something that we're interested in, but that we thought that the Falcons we're going to win the game. So like, let's just grab, +1.5 or, pick them or whatever.
Mhm.
And then they announced that he's not going to play. And the line goes to Atlanta -2.5.
Mhm.
I was like, man, that's kind of a big move. And you start working the calculator,
Yep.
going back to the previous week, and you go, hang on a sec. Like Marcus Mariota played last week and the Commanders were rated as such. And then he's playing this week. Oh, by the way, they won that game and did so relatively comfortably against the Raiders. And then they rule him out for this game, and the rating actually goes below the week before.
Mhm.
And and I think that's again just kind of the market or sort of odds makers trying to guess what performance you're going to get. Where it's like, well, Marcus Mariota at home against the Raiders, this is the type of performance that we're going to get from the Commanders. It'll be sort of around league average.
Mhm.
And we're fine with kind of giving you value on Washington because people are going to be afraid of Marcus Mariota. And then you see Mariota play, and now it's, oh, like he can fill in, but odds makers are going, "Well, yeah, but it's on the road against the Falcons here, and there's no Terry McLaurin. And while Terry McLaurin might not mean more than like a half point or a point here or there, in this specific situation,
To a
this
backup
is
QB.
this is where it could be even, like it's not a problem for Mariota to be at home against the Raiders, but it is a sort of exponentially bigger problem going on the road against the Falcons. And so they're like, we're actually expecting a bottom end result here, and we're not afraid of kind of underrating the Commanders, because if you want to hit the Commanders at +2.5, knock yourself out. Because I think that's what the stance was for odds makers last week.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting with Jaden Daniels here, if he's back, like how far back, if you will, does the Commanders rating go? Because this number right here, this Chargers number, which I still, again, you're like, okay, we're not, we do the thing where it's like, okay, if we're not going to downgrade a team if we expect them to play bad, and they do. And that's what we did last week when it came to the Chargers and the Giants, right?
Yeah,
like,
I didn't mention that part.
well, people use the term spot, right? In this spot and that spot. And it's like this very sort of throwaway line. Chargers at Giants last week was the ultimate. That was what a spot actually is, right? It's quite literally a spot on the schedule where you can predict the team to play to the bottom of their range. Now, listen, there's a universe in which the Chargers play well in that game, and we all look dumb because it's like, they they beat the Giants comfortably and whatever. Sorry, that's not what happened. The Giants won that game in kind of every way in which we thought that they might. So, as you said, like this could be the bounce back spot for the Chargers. But again, that has to come with a price. And so the first thing is, did the Chargers actually get downgraded off that loss? So is there any value on the Chargers because of that? The answer to that is no. They're still in the low 60s. They haven't moved from a rating perspective. So it's like, okay, you can bounce back, but you also have to bounce back like and then some. You're not getting a discount on the Chargers. Whereas a -3 line here is suggesting that the Commanders are a 53 out of 100. We had their rating, the market had their rating closer to the high 50s, right? 57, 58
Okay.
before the season started. And so there might be more room, if you will, to go up for the Commanders once Daniels is actually ruled in. And the betting odds makers have this sort of in a safe space because they have it right on 3.
Yeah.
So you can have, depending on how the ratings all shake out, right? You can have a safe space be like that nether region between 8 and 10. That safe space can be like -1, -1.5, or that safe space can just be 3. So if Daniels is in, all of a sudden the line comes down and it's -2.5. If Daniels is out, all of a sudden the line goes back up, and probably considerably, because Mariota didn't play all that well in the last game, right? We start doing this thing with the backup quarterback, which is kind of what you're supposed to do because it's a backup quarterback. I would say this. I think Jaden Daniels is going to play. It seemed like he was like close last week.
Yeah.
It's easy to give him another week after you've just won and after Mariota has played well. It is considerably more different after you have lost and you didn't play all that well. So I think he's going to play, at which point, like, I want 3 points here because I haven't even gotten to the factor that is the Chargers offensive line. And, we saw Joe Alt, removed from that game off the cart, and you're like, oh my God, he's going to go find a seat, next to Rashawn Slater. And you're literally going to be without now your 2 offensive tackles, high profile first round pick offensive tackles for the rest of the season. Now he's listed as doubtful. So the good news is that Alt is not necessarily out for the year here. I think it's like a high ankle sprain, which again, not really all that ideal. And so as much as we go, yeah, the Commanders don't have the same defense, certainly the defensive front as the Giants, Chargers offensive line, like how many more guys can you possibly lose here when it comes to this offensive line, right? Even Mekhi Becton, who didn't play last week, he's questionable for this week. If he plays, how much can he play? Like, what does that injury necessarily entail? So, listen, I'm not in love with the Commanders' defense at all, but again, I think from a value perspective, you're not getting any deals with the Chargers here just because they lost. And again, there might be some room to maneuver here with regards to Jaden Daniels, and we should be able to hop on this +3 with the idea that he is eventually going to play in this game, and that the line might close below 3 because, again, odds makers are just kind of waiting and seeing when it comes to Daniels. I'm going to bet that he does play and that we can get some closing line value on +3 here with the Commanders.
That is a very interesting way to bet this game. I like that. Seeing where your thoughts on what the team is like with Jaden Daniels and then taking advantage of that if the line does come down for sure. Great call there. Almost got me there.
Not great enough. Not great enough. Couldn't go. Okay.
Almost. But we will go to Indianapolis and the Colts, who are 7-point favorites at home to the Raiders. And I mean, it says up here that I'm on Indy -7. Okay.
Right.
And
Right.
that's a number for sure. The
Yeah.
Colts lost last week and they didn't cover against the Rams. But as
Yeah.
we mentioned, the Colts did a lot to beat themselves. Too many penalties, having 10 guys on the field, giving up a big time play, right? Like
Yeah.
Danny Dimes picks, fumbles going into the end zone, holding calls, like so much going on, right? And so I look at that game and you think, as we mentioned earlier, the Colts lose, but they kind of beat themselves. And if there's a team or a dude talking about beating themselves, Geno Smith
Yeah.
and the Raiders.
Geno Smith's music. Yeah.
Welcome to town, because Geno struggled last week. And when he didn't struggle and he was handing it to Ashton Genty,
Yeah.
Genty is just a beast, like breaking
Totally.
tackles left and right. Max
College
Crosby,
Genty. Yeah.
right?
Came back. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then you got Max Crosby just wrecking house, and all of it for naught because Geno
Yeah.
was just wilding. So I look
I
at
know.
this and I'm
God
like,
damn.
I know I should take the points here. I
Yeah.
know it's 7 and I should take the points here, but I just think the Colts are a better operation as a whole here, and that's why I'm going to lay the 7 points here. But clearly, I could be talked into taking the Raiders, but it's a tough one here. I'm on the Colts. I think the Colts operation and Danny Dimes will just get back to business, run the ball. Maybe their receiver will not celebrate before crossing the end zone.
Yeah. What's he
Maybe,
doing?
right? Maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I'll lay the 7 points here with the Colts.
Yeah, it's the first time, right, that the Colts are in this situation where it's like, yeah, it's not just win, but like you got to cover a number. Like, yeah, we were a
Mhm.
little bit dicey on the Tennessee deal where they were on the road, and I think it was like -4, -4.5, right?
Yeah.
But again, like, God, Tennessee's god awful. So, like, I don't want to be like, oh, sorry, Colts, you don't get any credit for dominating Tennessee, but like,
Yeah.
kind of everybody does.
We'll get to
Um,
that later because there's a great quote
yeah.
from Cam Ward.
Yeah, which I mean, anytime quotes are coming out of the Tennessee Titans, like it's going to be a grim situation. So, yeah, like you said, man, like now we're asking them to cover a big number here, and I'll put it this way, right? Like, listen, we don't need to rehash my general preseason, affection for the Colts and hopes for the Colts. All of
Yep.
those still exists. All of that still exists, I should say. Talked about it last week. Ended up winning the bet again. I don't know. I don't think we were the right side in winning that bet.
Mhm.
Um, I'll put it this way, right? So like we talk about the range. The Colts have been rated, had gotten to a point after 2 or 3 games where they had been rated outside of their prescribed range before the season started. You can either just bet against that over and over again, and if you keep losing, you're going to just keep losing. And also, if you keep losing, it probably means that the rating is correct. So you have to get to a point where you go, you know what, fine. I do it by sort of colors, right? Like you're not fully blue, you're sort of half blue, and then eventually, you play well enough that you go, you know what, you're right. This is actually your rating. After 4 games, the market was incorrect. It just so happened we were correct about the market being incorrect, right? Which
Mhm.
sometimes, kind of in a reverse psychology way, kind of makes it more difficult. But
Yep.
now, after that game, even though they did not win, they did not cover, which should come with it, even the smallest of downgrades. I am keeping the Colts where they are,
Yep.
right? And not only that, I'm not only keeping them where they are, but like I'm giving them sort of full credit for being a 56-57 out of 100, when before the season started the market was sort of like, yeah, anywhere from 40 to 54 is sort of the right number. And it's like, no, they're 56, they're 57, that's cool. The Raiders, on the other hand, like I'm not sure what we're supposed to do with this team who, to be a 7-point underdog against a 56 or a 57, have to be down into like the 36 range, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going any further than that, you're now into Giants, Jets, Dolphins.
Yeah.
God, the Browns are rated higher than the Raiders are right now. Like that's some
It's
grim
bad.
stuff,
It's
right?
bad.
Like that is some grim stuff. And so I just go, I'm with you, right? Where it's like last week, I mean, roll the tape. Like we're like, yeah, Max Crosby is going to be able to put pressure on Caleb Williams the way that the Cowboys weren't, and Ashton Genty, and then Raiders offense as a whole should be better. And Geno Smith should be able to take advantage of a Bears defense that isn't very good. And that last point just didn't happen. And so it's infuriating that Geno's just going to keep throwing these interceptions, I guess, because stuff isn't sort of adding up for him and Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator for the Raiders. Like, I don't know. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not ready to give up on the Raiders being at least like okay
Yeah.
and not being like a total SH show the way that the Saints, I mean, my God, the Saints are rated 33 this week. Spoiler alert for,
Yeah.
and if you're going to tell me the Raiders are 36 and like that's just going to be their sort of average level of play, like, yeah, that's a bummer. Right.
Yeah.
That is just kind of a bummer. Not that I have any sort of emotional affinity to the Raiders. It's just like, man, like this team should be, because of the players that we just mentioned. Again, I'm not even asking them to be average. Let's be slightly below average, because a slightly below average team loses this game by 3 or 4 points and covers a number as high as 7 here that the Colts are now playing out of, depth, right? Like
Yeah.
you and I talk about, obviously, like the weight class thing, right?
Mhm.
This isn't weight class. This is depth as far
Yeah.
as what's required to cover a point spread, right? And in a
Mhm.
way, that can kind of be the same thing, right? Like the Bills have had that issue where it's
Mhm.
like, man, our point spreads are so bleeping high. Like we just can't get there. We can't cover 12 and a half against the Dolphins. Like we
Yeah.
can't cover 16 against the Saints. Like, yeah, we'll win both of those games by like 2 scores and like we'll be the highest rated team in the league. But like, man, you're asking a lot of us. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's not 11, it's not 16, but like -7 for the Colts. It's like, it's the first time we've asked you to do anything like this. And it's because the Raiders have been such a drag. But it's
Mhm.
like, you have to live in the uncomfortable
Yeah.
in betting the NFL.
Yeah.
And taking the Raiders here is the uncomfortable, right? Because you're like, man, they're just going to throw the ball away, and the Colts are going to, do what the Colts have done so far this season and play really, really good football. So, there isn't really any sort of reason to expect like a quote unquote bad game for the Colts or like them to play at the bottom end of their range. It's really more that this line is lined like the Raiders' average is really, really low. And like maybe because it's Geno Smith and he's a veteran quarterback, it's just been him playing a couple of games at the bottom of his range, and if he can just get back to kind of average, there's enough on this Raiders team to keep this game at the very least close.
Yeah, the tough part for me, and the only reason I'm not switching this game is just because it's been multiple weeks in a row of just like, Gino, what are we doing here? Like
Yeah,
nothing other
man,
than that
I
with the
get
Raiders,
it.
right? It's just Gino, like you're a tough hang right now, my dude,
Yeah,
and I can't sit there for another week just being like, Gino just missed that wide open guy, or Gino just threw another
yeah,
pick to nobody, and it's just like. But we'll see. We'll see.
yeah,
Because you're
and
right.
give him
This
credit.
is a show me game for
Yeah,
the Colts, right? This is a show me game. The ask is now like, how legit are you guys now?
yeah,
How legit are you
it's
at
yeah.
home? 7-point favorites. Let's see it.
And listen, it's the NFL, right? So like that's every week in some form or fashion, right? It's like,
Yeah,
oh, here's your heavyweight tilt against the Rams. Like, how do you do well, in that? And like again, even though they don't win or they don't cover, you're like, still pretty good, right? They
still
hung in
pretty
there for
good. Yeah,
12 rounds.
hell yeah.
And then it's like, here's your new challenge, cover a big number as a big favorite. And it's like, all right, like maybe they do, maybe they don't. I mean, one last thing is just like, yeah, the Geno thing is a bummer, but like, they show the montage of the Bears intercepting Geno, and it was like dudes just flying across like
Yeah,
Superman, making really nice plays. And at a certain
fair.
point, you do have to give credit to that team. Now, again, maybe their defensive coordinator had it as such where they're like, listen, Geno's going to try this throw, and like, if you can just sort of like at the last minute, like get in front of this, like this is going to be an opportunity for us to get a turnover. But it wasn't one of these deals where it's like, oh, sailed over his head, like catch it like a
Fair.
punt from a safety or whatever. Like dudes were diving to make some wild interceptions in that game. And so again, like sometimes you just kind of have to chalk it up to like, man, it's kind of unlucky. The other guys just made some really nice plays here, and they weren't these super obvious interceptions. At least that's what I'm going to tell myself as I take the Raiders +7 this week.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Speaking of making plays, it doesn't sound like we'll be seeing Lamar Jackson making plays anytime soon, as the Ravens will be hosting the Houston Texans, and the Texans are road favorites. I'm assuming it's because Lamar is out. We have gotten that official word that it's the Cooper Rush era in uh, Baltimore. And I can only think of just last week all the quotes from Deion Sanders and obviously the reports about Shador Sanders talking about how why would I want to go to Baltimore and back up Lamar? I want
I
a chance
know.
to play.
That's a great
Like,
point.
it's just so hilarious. But if we get to this game, the Ravens are banged up, super banged up. It's not just Lamar that was out. Their defense just continued to take all the hits. Roquan went down last week.
Yeah.
Humphrey was down. Wiggins was down. Like, their defense super banged up. Not really sure how many of those guys are coming back. But if you don't have your defense, you don't have Lamar, this is a lot to ask for Cooper Rush against a pretty good Texans defense that, even as their offense continues to struggle, it took them a half to kind of figure some stuff out last week against the Titans. But I feel like if you're Houston, you got to be looking at this game and you just got to just come out and win this game. And I think the 1.5 point spread is pretty simple. Like, just beat Cooper Rush, right? Like, what are we doing here? This can't be this difficult of an ask here for the Houston Texans. And maybe that's the issue. But either way, I'm on Houston minus 1.5. And that seems too easy. And you never like when something seems too easy.
Well, and that's right. And it's easy right up to the point where you turn the game on and the Texans are in Baltimore, and you're like, I'm asking the Texans to do this. Like, whether or not it's, I mean, certainly without Lamar even, right? Like, and again, we get into the deal where it's like Cooper Rush, and it's like,
he's played a lot of football.
He's played a lot of football. He's played a lot of football, and he's played some good football. And again, hasn't been in this offense, and the offense that is built for Lamar Jackson is considerably different. And so the challenge for Cooper Rush and the players around him is how much of the offense that is really, really intricate. Right? It's really intricate from like a run perspective and all of that sort of thing. How much of that is applicable to Cooper Rush's skill set that they can actually still do versus obviously the threats that Lamar possesses. And then you obviously talked about the defense, and yeah, man, like you didn't even mention, because I mean, he's been out for the last couple of games, right? But like maybe the most important guy on that entire defense is Matabuke. And, so it's him, it's Humphrey that you mentioned. Oh God, and like you said, Roquan, and you're just like, how many guys have to kind of be removed here before you just go like, I don't know, this team has to be kind of at the bottom of the barrel of the league. And so we record this on Wednesday. As of Tuesday night, this line had moved to Texans minus 2.5.
Oh,
which again, like not a huge difference per se between 2.5 and 1.5, or even some ones that are starting to trickle back here. But like, listen, like the Ravens were rated really high, man. Like it was, 60 to 75 before the season started. And they get out to a 2-touchdown lead against the Bills. And it's like, this team is definitely like a 74 or 75, like Super Bowl favorite type of a deal. And then a bunch of stuff happens, right? And they find themselves. And you lose, but obviously you lose that game to the Bills. But like, if before the game started, you'd say, you know what, the Bills are actually going to win this game. You'd be like, oh, okay, well, pick 'em game on the road against Buffalo. That's tough. If I had told you, forget all the BS about like coordinators being gone and this, that, or whatever. If I told you the Lions beat the Ravens, you'd be like, yeah, okay, like I could totally see that. Especially if I told you like maybe the most important player on their defense was out. Like, that's fine. And if I told you that they went to Kansas City and the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Ravens, you'd be like, yeah, and I get that too, right? So I think everybody's kind of underrating the idea that the Ravens were going to have this really kind of brutal schedule to start their year, right?
Oh yeah.
And I remember looking at the like divisional odds for the upcoming season and being like, this could be very much like last year, where the Ravens kind of struggle out of the gate. They spot, maybe it's Cincinnati, maybe it's Pittsburgh again, them kind of a lead, and then they can kind of like storm back once the schedule gets a little bit easier over the course of, towards the end of the season. Problem is, it's one thing to go down 1-3 here. It's another to be down all of your best players or much of your best players. So, Shell, like, if I told you, obviously, that this is a team that had played well enough, certainly at times, to validate a 74, 73, whatever, and that we thought, like, listen, if it doesn't go well, regardless of injury, like, forget about injury to Lamar, let's, keep that out of it. Like, the worst version of the Ravens was expected to be like a 60, 61, 62, something like that. based on everything that's kind of happened here with the injuries for this week, where would you put the Ravens rating, right? Again, like there are still some guys left on the team. Where would you have this team rated going into this game? What kind of expectation from a play out of 100 would you expect from this Ravens team?
The reality of the Ravens team and Harbaugh and all the like Harbaugh rah rah, next man up,
Hmm.
all the buttons he's going to be pushing.
Hmm.
It's a team that's not going to come out and get blown out in week 1 of like all of these injuries and stuff like that, right? And I think the
Sure.
Texans, I see them as being, still close enough to a Texans team that like they should be able to be in the game. And so, you know, the rating it becomes difficult because it's tough to just like plummet a team's rating from like, hey, I think you're high 60s to be like you're at a 50 now or you're in the 40s now. Like that's a lot. But
Sure.
they are missing a lot of dudes,
Yeah.
right? So the problem is I need to see, right? Before
Yeah.
giving them the rating, I need to see which version of Cooper Rush, which offense are they going to run with Cooper Rush? Who are these defenders that they're going to have filling in the backup roles? Like there's a lot to see here. Is Derrick Henry, because I'm assuming they're going to have to lean on Derrick Henry a lot more. Is he going to, is he done with the fumbles? Like there's so many questions. Do you know what I mean? Like there's so
Yeah,
many
of
questions
course.
even
It's the whole point
with
of the question. It's
I
so
know.
hard to figure out. Give me a
Listen,
number just for fun. We're playing the game. Give me a number.
I'd still off of respect, I can't put them below like 53 or something like that.
So when they were 2.5 point underdogs, the number was 38.
Yes, I know. I know. I get it. I get
Right?
it.
It's like
I get it.
wow.
But I'm saying out of respect, right? Like I'm leaving them.
I don't disagree with you,
I
man.
can't drop them like 45 points, right?
45
Like,
rating points, yeah, for sure. Which essentially is like, well, listen, this line was 10 in the look
yeah,
ahead line, and
yeah.
like if you were impressed by the Texans' victory last week because it had a shutout score next to it, like I'm sorry, man. Like I watched,
I
well,
watched a lot of that game because it was a survivor
it
pick.
was
I
our
turned off
survivor
the
pick,
second TV and I was like,
yeah.
what is happening in this game? And like turned it on for a bit. I was just like, what is going on with their offense? I don't understand.
Yeah. Right. And so it's like, wait a second here. Like you're dropping because it's not like the Texans need to go up. And by the way, the Texans to get here have gone up a little
Mhm.
bit. So yeah, man, it was 30. And like, listen, the market then goes like, hang on a sec, plus 2.5, like that, plus 2.5, like that has to, whether it's a rating of 38 or
Yeah.
just a sheer spread of plus 2.5,
Mhm.
people are like, all right, we're gonna just take that. And
Yeah.
it's funny because like you could just wait and maybe it goes to +3,
Yeah.
right? So from the psychological
Mhm.
standpoint of actual betting, it's like, well, if it's 2.5 and we haven't gotten an official word that Lamar Jackson isn't going to play, then like, yeah, maybe it does go to +3 when he gets announced. Like we've seen that before because this isn't the first
Definitely.
time that Lamar Jackson has gotten hurt. And certainly this is the lowest rating the Ravens have ever had when Lamar Jackson has been hurt. But it's also because they have these 3, 4 other guys that are really key pieces that are hurt. And so the market comes in there like, you know what, hold on a sec, like it can't be that bad. And so now that we're at like +1.5, +1, we're back into like kind of the mid to low 40s, which again is still lower than your suggestion off of just like out of respect and like and maybe some low level respect of Cooper Rush in this game. Let's just let's say we're gonna get like an average football team here with the Ravens, which is just Cooper Cup. Oh, God, I'm gonna keep saying Cooper Cup. Cooper Rush.
Yeah.
That's Cooper Manning.
Yeah.
Cooper Rush just playing okay. Hand the ball off to Derrick Henry. I wouldn't be surprised if they said, Derrick, you can take the week off here. We're just going to go 50 throws from Cooper Rush and have Justice Hill out there running screen passes and
Yeah.
check downs and stuff, right?
Mhm.
To me, he's actually a little bit more valuable in the offense when Cooper
Interesting.
Rush is forced to play. There might be sort of a prop element to all of that needs to be deployed.
Mhm.
But 50 out of 100 for the Ravens knocks this down to Baltimore -1.
Yeah.
So again, like because we're
Yeah.
in this space of just kind of like I don't know what like this could go any direction. Listen, there's not that much difference between Houston -1 or the Ravens -1 from like an actual final sort of deal here. But it just gives you sort of an understanding. Like,
Oh
all
yeah.
right, what does the market think of these teams? What do odd makers think of these teams? And then how is the market going to react to that? I think is sort of the key here. that's not me telling you like, hey, you need to make this bet or that bet. There are so many guys who are questionable that aren't necessarily like definitively out that you do want to wait around to kind of see like,
Of
all
course.
right, is Wiggins gonna play? Humphrey's doubtful, Roquan is doubtful, and Metabuke's out for the year, and of course Jackson's doubtful as well. So it's like doesn't look like there's going to be good news coming on the horizon for the Ravens.
Mhm.
So it is just kind of funny that the market was like, yeah, we know it's all probably bad news from here, but like we're still gonna look at +2.5 and be like, oh, that's too much of an overreaction,
Yeah, and I think that
So
still has
it's
something to
interesting.
say more about the viewpoints of the Texans, right? Like, that was an ugly
And that's the
performance
thing.
last week,
If
right?
you
So,
watch that game and you go, this is still not an above average team,
yeah,
you have to make that adjustment as well.
of course. Yeah.
And so if you go Ravens, at 50 out of 100, and you go Texans at like 48 out of 100, 47, anything below average, then we're talking about Ravens home field advantage plus like
Mhm,
a half of a point, and we're talking about Ravens -2 or something
mhm.
like that, right? Where from a money line perspective, it just means that the Ravens are maybe 53% likely to win this game when they're being sort of rated as 53% likely to lose this game. So these are the margins that we're kind of talking about, right? And I think the
Yeah.
money line is sort of the indicator in all of that.
Yeah, super interesting stuff there. Game to watch this week for sure. Another game that'll be super interesting to me, anyways, will be the Lions, who are 10.5 point road favorites in Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. The Lions showed up and showed out last week against a pretty good Cleveland Browns defense. And the questions are out. Are they just rolling again? Like, is this just the wagon that we saw from the Detroit Lions to start last season before the defensive injuries kind of, brought them back down to earth? I don't know. This is interesting, but I do think for me to take a double-digit point spread to lay the points on a double-digit point spread, I got to think the team that I'm laying the points with is really, really, really good,
Mhm.
and I got to think the team that they're playing against is really, really bad. Two terrible stinkers from the Bengals in a row. Their offense just looks stuck in the mud on Monday night, and now it's a short week against Detroit. Just not a good spot for them. The 10.5 is tough. I liked it better when it was 10. And when I
Breaking
double
news.
checked
Yeah.
before we started, I was like, damn
Yeah.
it, it's 10.5.
Breaking news. Better wishes he had a better number on game. Yeah. Like, oh, I
Right?
liked it better when it was lower. Like, yeah, of course you did.
Right. But right as we started, I was like, it's at 10 and
No,
a
I
half
get it.
now.
I
So
got
I'm
you.
here.
For
I'm
sure.
here. Lions
Yeah.
minus 10.5 and double digit point spread. Lions just rolling. Bengals and I mean Jamar Chase, poor guy, man. Poor Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I know they got to be used to this at some point, but like still has to suck going through it.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I guess, listen, if you think the Ravens drop in their rating is something,
Yeah.
boy, do I have something for you.
Yeah.
How do we get to 10.5? Um, Listen, I'm not even gonna make you play the game, man. I'm just gonna tell you,
Let's go.
the Bengals are 25 out of 100 to get here.
I mean, that game was really bad on Monday night.
It was really bad. It was really bad. There's no question about it. The game before that wasn't particularly good against
No.
Minnesota. Um, we talked about it, I think, on the show. The idea of first of like is Cincinnati as bad as the Tennessee Titans or near it, right?
Mhm.
Because they were like 1 point off from when the Titans in week one in Cam Ward's first start as a rookie, and that game was an 8 or 9 point game where like this was on, 3/4 of the way through from a
Mhm.
survivor perspective, right? And so, you talk about the Broncos and like we did with regards to their trip to the Eagles, and it's like, yeah, I mean, is that team like really all that great? So then the Broncos win that game comfortably, and you look and the line gets reopened for this Lions game, and the Bengals are back at home. And what I was going to say was like the Broncos, or excuse me, the Bengals had it pretty tough.
Mhm.
Road game against the Vikings, road game against the Broncos, right? And two really good defenses. And so the Vikings did the thing where they turned the Bengals over. Not all of those, honestly, most of them weren't um, Jake Browning's fault. And then this past week, it wasn't like there was an egregious amount of turnovers. You could tell that Jake Browning, and they said it on the broadcast, he's like, I will not be turning the ball over today. I will incomplete the universe to death here, but I will not be turning the football over. And he didn't, and he just
Mhm.
kind of threw the ball away a lot of times. And he always kind of threw it like 2 yards away from where it needed to be with regards to T. Higgins
Yeah.
or Jamar Chase. And by the way, Jamar Chase was doing the thing. And listen, we got Jamar Chase is a long leash because he's one of the best players in the league. But like, as you and I talk about, and we've talked about it with lesser receivers, you can't go and complain on the sideline and then immediately drop a ball on your very next target. So, again, all of these guys have some blame in the mix. I believe Chase had the fumble too, right? In the week before that.
Correct.
So, yeah, it's all bad, man. It's all bad. And so as I talk about with like the idea of like kind of the colors and the chart and like how much further below the range, like how can the bottom just fall out of the Cincinnati Bengals? We're at a point at 25 where like the Titans are literally the only team with a worst rating. Carolina Panthers are rated at 27. We'll talk about them in a second.
We will.
Right? So like fundamentally, as bad as it's looked against, again, on the road against Brian Flores and the Vikings, on the road against Vance Joseph and the Broncos, as bad as it's looked,
Mhm.
are they worse than the Panthers going back home? When it's
Yeah.
not like we didn't see Jake Browning throw the football with some success against the Jacksonville Jaguars
Mhm.
in relief, or we haven't seen it in years past. And I'm not telling you the Bengals are going to win the game. I'm just telling you where they're rated right
Yeah.
now, and that like you couldn't just like we had to go lower than Jets, we had to go lower than Saints. Again, like I said, we had to go lower than the Panthers. And you go, well, maybe just maybe the Lions aren't rated high enough.
Mhm.
Well, again, within that sort of construct of what are we expecting out of the Lions this year, that before the season started, it was 55 to 70,
Okay.
right? Because they have to take a step back. The highest they ever really got last year, despite being 15-2 or whatever it was
Mhm.
in the low 70s. It's like, well,
Mhm.
we're gonna wait and see before they get to the low 70s.
For sure.
This number to get to 10 and a half puts them at the very high end of that range, 69. Nice. So again, while that's nice for them, that's kind of the spot where you go, all right, you're either proving to me that you are better than not just your average, but your range, the high end of your range of the expectation this season, and that the Bengals are a 25 out of 100 type of outfit, right? Both of those two things have to
Need to
be
be
not
true. Yeah.
need to be true just to get to 10 and a half as
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
expected number. And so you can tell me and be like, well, listen, the Lions just won decisively against the Browns last week, and they beat the Ravens on the road, and they hammered the Bears the week before that. Like maybe they are, and I would listen to that conversation. But again, we talked about the box score with that Browns game last week. Like the Lions didn't crack 300 yards
Mhm.
against the Browns. Now, again, way better defense.
Yeah.
Way better defense,
Mhm.
right? So again, like just from a numbers perspective, it's like you kind of just have to take the Bengals here at plus 10 and a half because like there's no secrets, man. Like it's bad for the Bengals, and that's what the rating is. There's no secrets for the Lions. Like the rating's really good for the Lions.
Yeah.
They are not contractually required to win this game by 11 points in order to get a count on the standings. And
Exactly.
if,
Yeah.
and again, the defense isn't the Vance Joseph Broncos defense. It's not the
Yeah.
Brian Flores, with crowd noise type defense. It's going on the road. Again, we're gonna dare Jake Browning to get the ball into Jamar Chase's hands on a day where it should be easier than when you're going up against Patrick Surtain and Riley Moss and a really good Broncos secondary. And so I think that the Bengals should have their best chance to move the football and get 14 points, 20
Something.
points,
Yeah. Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And again, like maybe it's just the Lions just do the thing where they just run it over and over and over again, and they get to 30, 35 points relatively easily, and like, who knows. But again, the Lions usually do that blowout version of the Lions. They usually do that at home.
Mhm.
So again, right? Like you're asking them to be above and beyond the Call of Duty, The ask against the Ravens was just win. Again, it's a little bit of a different, right? It's like the Colts thing, right? It's like
Mhm.
instead of just win this or just dominate a team at home, you're now asked to dominate a team on the road. And like that's the first time we've
It's a
really
big
asked the
ask.
Lions to do that this year. And so first time we've asked them to do that. It's the first time Jake Browning has got to actually start a game and play a game at home. And again, we're talking about 10.5 points. That's the whole key to the conversation, right? Is just an epic rating difference between these two that are on the very brink of the top end for the Lions and the very brink of the bottom end that we ever thought imaginable for the Bengals.
It's the most interesting part of this whole thing was when you said you have to believe that the Lions are better like they're at that top tier of their rating and the Bengals are at the bottom end of their rating. And I just do.
Right. Well,
It's so
and
interesting,
just
right?
to
Like
clarify, right?
it's
Like
so interesting. No, I know what you're
the
saying. I know.
Bengals thing isn't the bottom of their rating. The Bengals is such a new low that it's like the bottom of like what's humanly possible. Right? It's not
That's
even
fair.
it's not them, right?
That's
They're at the
fair. Yeah.
bottom of the Carolina Panthers rating.
No, okay. I got you. I got you. I
Right?
understand.
Like
I
put it
understand. I understand.
yeah.
It
One
will be
last
I know.
one
I
last just
got
sort
you.
of comparison. Week 3, right? If they played Minnesota again on the road in Minnesota with
Okay.
this rating that the Bengals are holding right now,
Yeah.
Minnesota would be 9-point favorites.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Did the Minnesota Vikings be 9-point favorites? Say it with me now, everybody. Over anybody, right? Like again,
Anybody.
like
Yeah. No,
if
for sure.
that's what's sort of
I
required to
get it.
kind of
I get
understand
it.
how low the rating is, like just kind of has to be
I
stamped
get
on
it.
there.
I'm on the
Still not doing
Lions.
it.
I'm on the Lions minus 10.5. And you know
All
what?
right.
The silver lining will be I'm a Jamar Chase fantasy owner. And so if it goes the other way, all right, cool. We'll just leave it there. Our next game, let's head to New Orleans, where I looked at this line like 3 times over because it said the Saints were 2.5-point favorites. And I'm very confused by that because I don't know who the Saints would be 2.5-point home favorites to. I guess I would assume the Panthers they'd have to be
Yeah,
playing.
sure.
But it's the New York Jets. And the Jackson Dart era
Giants.
began with a win against the Chargers. He
Yeah.
looked pretty solid. He was off to a great start. Malik Neighbors tears his ACL. They're still able to get some things done. Poor Giants fans just can't have good things, right? But that's on offense. Poor Giants fans. On defense, as mentioned, defense looked good. All their pass rushers just doing work. Abdul Carter had a big game. I know that I've talked a lot this season about the Saints and my guy Spence having his moments.
Yeah.
But I mean, they went toe to toe with the Bills last week. They just did on the road. And maybe that's why they're favored by 2.5 points in this game, I guess. But I mean, going on the road and covering 16 points or 16 and a half, whatever it was when we talked about it last week,
Yeah.
and now being home favorites against anybody, I mean, it's a different game of me betting on the Saints here. Give me the points and Jackson Dart and the Giants. I'm going to take all the points I can get here and hope that maybe it's more and people are into these new Saints, that are kind of scrappy.
Yeah.
And at
This
home.
is like there's like a scrappy tax or
Mhm.
something, right? Like in part, so I'll put it this way: as I'm looking, when I was putting this line in, to try to sort of figure out what the new rating for the Saints was, I was like, okay. And listen, we talked about it last week. I'm like, the Saints aren't the worst team in the league. The Tennessee
Yeah.
Titans are the worst team in the league.
Mhm.
Okay, right? Like, so in sort of two ways, it was like, well, shouldn't the Titans be lower and the Saints be higher? And we talked about obviously the box score element and how it was kind of a fluke that they got beat as badly as they did against the Seahawks. And then since we had spoken, right, the line had come down from like 16 and a half, I think, on Wednesday morning down to that like 15, maybe even 14 and a half. So clearly it was already kind of on the move as far as being like, well, the Saints actually aren't this bad. I kept hitting numbers. It was like an auction as I was like going up the board here, right? Where it was like, all right, they're not a 26 or, whatever. It's like, do I hear 28? Do I hear 29,
Yeah.
30, 31? And it's like, no, we're still not at Saints -2, which is sort of where like the flat number is. Like I know DraftKings has 2.5, but there's sort of heavy juice on the +2.5 side. But like, even just to get to -2, it's like, okay, more. I'm like, whew, really? I got to go more, because also I think the Giants need to be upgraded. They just
Mhm.
beat the Chargers last week, right?
Yep.
So it's just like, you're hitting multiple buttons. You're going Giants have to go up. Yep. Okay, well, if the Giants are going up, the Saints have to keep going up. Saints are favored in this game, as you mentioned. And so we're now at 33 with the Saints,
All right.
which admittedly was kind of where they were at the start of the season, right? Where
Mhm.
they're in a 7-point game with the Cardinals, where they're in a 4-point game back at home. And you and I talked about the idea of Spencer Rattler going on the road to Seattle, and like that was going to be, troublesome. And then Buffalo the next week wasn't going to be a party either.
Mhm.
And so I think I was kind of hoping that like the market wouldn't really notice that the Saints aren't all that good, because they would just lose these games by a couple of scores and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So the fact that the market has adjusted in a way that like I would have maybe projected the Saints at 33, I was just
Mhm.
hoping they weren't
Yeah.
it wasn't going to project them in this way. So kind of bummed out from that perspective, because I thought I'd be able to get like Saints money line, like -110, like a
Yeah.
pick 'em type of a game, right? And so now that it's -2.5, right? Like from a strict value standpoint, there just doesn't seem to be much. Um, and part of it too, and part of the Giants not getting the upgrade that they sort of earned, if you will, is the obvious, right? The Malik Neighbors injury is brutal, right? Being without him, who even if they don't throw it to him on every play, you got to be aware of him on every play, right? And you can go to like, Yahoo Fantasy Football, and you're getting in there and you're looking and seeing who like the biggest ads are, and it's like Wandale Robinson and like Slayton, and you're just like, oh no, guys, like this. No, not like this, right? Like that's if that's the move you got to make because Malik Neighbors is injured, you're going to go to Wandale Robinson. Like no, just
It's a
just
tough one.
no. Right, it's a tough one, right? And so that I'm so go, yeah, okay, I get why the Giants aren't going to get upgraded for that win, because in part, same way we're not downgrading the Chargers, because it was like, yeah, it's just kind of a tough spot for the Chargers, and it was a good spot, if you will, for the Giants. And so all this is to say, it's like, yeah, I was kind of hoping to bet on the Saints, which is a sentence that like really didn't think I was going to be saying this year. And so, I guess as long as it's not 3, then that like might still be the thing that happens here.
Mhm.
But like, they get to go back home where they were incredibly competitive against both the 49ers and the Cardinals, who, it's not like those were the only wins that the Cardinals and the 49ers have had all season. So, yeah, that's the sort of, conundrum that I'm in here. Maybe people will notice that the Saints are favored and they will be appalled by that, and the number will kind of come back down, and there'll be a kind of a cheap money line available here on the Saints. That's kind of where I'm, kind of where I'm standing with regards to this game.
Totally true. Totally true. And we'll stick there. I'll stick with the Giants at +2.5 there, and we'll go to another NFC East game or another NFC East team and another 2.5 point spread, as the Cowboys are 2.5 point road favorites in New York against the
Mhm.
Jets. Dak Prescott continues to have just a great season. I mean, he's played really, really, really well. And even last
Yeah.
week without CD Lamb, I mean, he looked great. And it was a 40-40 tie, just an insane game for a multitude of reasons, including just costing me a massive, massive parlay, which is a story for another day and
Shall.
why you shouldn't do those things. But
Shall.
listen, I'm being honest. I'm being honest with the people.
Shall.
I am nothing unless I am honest with the people. And if I told you the actual story, you'd be even more upset. But it's also funny, and I would not tell that story on the pod. But
Fair.
um the Jets, meanwhile,
Yeah.
they looked horrible. Justin Fields struggled a lot on Monday night, and the Dolphins, and that was against the Dolphins, and now you're on a short week, and the Jets, I mean, I don't know what to make of the Jets. I don't know what to make of Justin Fields. He had moments where he was looking all right, and then he had moments where it's
Yeah.
just like, and I should be on the Jets here. This is another one where it's so glaring to me that there's no more 3-point spreads, right? Because if this was 3,
Yeah. Yeah.
if this was 3.5, I'd easily just be taking the Jets because I'm like, home dogs, let's go, let's roll. And instead, it's 2.5. And that makes me be like, oh, Cowboys. But should I still be leaning on the Jets? That is my question.
Well, yeah, listen, the Cowboys defense hasn't shown us any sort of improvement, right? Like, you give up 40, like, it's not
Still
like, well, they
trash.
kept him in it. It's like, well, no, Dak Prescott kept him in it. And as we've talked about it before, right? People forget that 2 years ago, Dak Prescott was like the second or third choice in the MVP ballot.
Yeah.
He's a good quarterback, guys. Like, I'm sorry. The rest
Yeah.
of the team might absolutely stink, and they do. But like, he's really, really good. As far as the Justin Fields thing, I didn't think it was that bad. I thought he actually played pretty well in Miami. He's 20 of 27, 226, no
So do you put it more
interceptions.
on Miami than last week? Like Miami
No,
just
I put it
was.
on. I put it on literally again, very much like Dak, and this is where I was headed with it.
Mhm.
The rest of the Jets team.
Interesting. Okay.
Like, it was like, if you saw the game, it was penalties and just
Yeah.
obviously fumble. Just like, it's a 17-10 game. Fields has already done a Justin Fields thing, the
Yeah.
50-yard
Which is
touchdown run, which is
amazing.
unreal. And between Braylon Allen fumbling on the goal line and then the fumble to start the second half when they were down a touchdown, it's like,
Yeah.
what would be cool? Like, having an opportunity. Well, first of all, scoring that touchdown in the first place, and then having that opportunity where, like, as they're going to halftime, Aaron Glenn's like, yeah, like, we need to clean a bunch of stuff up, but like, we're only down 7 and we get the ball to start the half. So, like, imagine, like, that's probably the message at
Yeah.
halftime,
Probably.
right?
One can
And
only
then
guess.
the first thing that happens is your boy goes and fumbles the ball on the kick return, and it's just like, what am I supposed to say to the rest of these guys at that point? It's like, that's the air out of the tires situation that, like, could not happen, but it did. Is it going to happen every week going forward? The interesting thing, right, is like, Aaron Glenn is going to, like, reshape the Jets' chemistry and their, attitude and, like,
Mhm.
all of this stuff. And it's like, and it took Dan Campbell like a year and a half to do that in Detroit, but here they are. So it's like, yeah, if I was Aaron Glenn, I would tell people that it's going to take me a year and a half to do something that, worked out really, really well. And I would just sort of stick with that, because I would be getting a really long leash for stuff that otherwise we would be talking about being massive coaching malpractice
Yeah.
when it comes to having guys who are dumb enough to catch punts and fair catch punts on the 2 yard line. I believe the same guy who fumbled on the kick return. And by the way, maybe he doesn't even get a chance to return a kick,
Yeah.
but Braylon Allen, the guy who fumbled the ball on the 1 yard line on the subsequent kickoff in the first quarter,
Mhm.
goes and gets hurt, which means then, instead of the Braylon Allen, Brees Hall, like, 2-man run game thing that they had cooking on the first drive, all of a sudden becomes just Brees Hall. And a not so fresh Brees Hall is not the same as big Braylon Allen coming in there and splitting carries with him. So
Yeah.
the bummer here is that Braylon Allen appears to be doubtful for this game because of that same injury that cost him the rest of the game on Monday night. And so it's hard to sort of make the case that the Jets offense, which again, 20 of 27 for 200 plus yards, is a really good showing for Justin Fields. And like, I
You're
realize
right.
that's kind of lowering the bar in an unnecessary
But
way.
still,
But like, maybe at home, when, listen, if the only thing that the Dolphins have, especially post Tyreek Hill injury, is a decent defensive line, maybe that's why the Jets were jumping off sides or jumping false starts as much as they were, and
Mhm.
costing, putting Justin Fields in a position where, again, it could have gone way, way worse when it's 2nd and 15 and 3rd and 18 and this, that, or whatever. So, again, against the Cowboys defense, which is just so bad. Again, like, the only unit that has made Caleb Williams look good this season.
Yeah.
Again, like, if I think it's kind of okay right now for Justin Fields. And again, he was played well in that first game against the Steelers.
Mhm.
Another poor defense. It's amazing
You're
the
right. I was
Steelers have
hard
been.
on him. I'm hard on him. You're
Yeah,
right.
listen, I would love 3, right? 2, believe me, like, I would be down with a +3. I'm hoping maybe that creeps up in the way that it does. Again, we'll have to sort of see. I think, is CD Lamb out for this game? Is he definitely out? Speaking of, I was really more looking
I'm pretty
at the
sure he is.
Jet situation, but I thought he was out for 2. Yeah, he's out again, because I think he's
Yeah.
out for a couple of weeks, if not maybe closer to a month.
Mhm.
Tyler Booker, right guard, he's out, and Tyler Guyton, all, 2 of the potentially, we could be out 2 of the 3 Tylers for the Cowboys here. And again, I don't even care what the injury situation is on the Cowboys defense. Keep them all healthy. Let's keep them all out there. We don't need the Cowboys to accidentally run into like a good,
Yeah.
linebacker or something like that they have on the practice squad or something.
Or
So
realize
yeah,
that Diggs isn't that good.
yeah. It's just you watch that game against the Dolphins and you go, the Jets certainly should have covered, stayed within the number of 3 or even pushed 3. But like they could have easily won the game. I don't say should have, but they could have easily won that game. It's just an insane amount of self-destruction type stuff. And again, maybe that's who the Jets are this year, and Aaron Glenn can't get that stuff turned around. Again, don't love the short week element to all of this, but like, again, maybe save yourself 50 yards of penalties and less fumbles by guys not named Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, I
I think
got
they have
you.
a chance. I think they have a chance to win the game. Which again, it's 2.5 point spread, right? So I mean, the idea that it's like, oh, they have no chance of winning. It's like,
Of
just look at
course
the
they do.
betting market, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, all of these teams where it's like feels like that number is too easy for Dallas. It's like, yeah, because it probably is. I think the Jets have a chance to win.
Yeah. The self-destruction nature of it is a quick reminder that Jets fans and Mets fans are
Ooh,
one and the same.
ooh,
As a Mets fan, I will just move
ooh,
on to the
no.
next game. And that is the Dolphins, the aforementioned Dolphins, 1.5 favorites on the road against the Panthers. The Panthers went from blowout win to blowout loss. So does that mean if we're just going back and forth, blowout win versus Miami? Question mark. I mean,
Right.
the Dolphins are on a short week. The Dolphins have no Tyreek Hill, who is out for the season with the knee injury. The Panthers, I mean, anyone trying to predict what the Panthers are going to do from a week to week basis, more power
Sure.
to you.
Totally.
In this pick 'em, it's like the Dolphins should be able to beat the Panthers, but I feel like throughout this season, I've been like the Dolphins should be able to do a lot of things, and they haven't really shown me much. And I think last week's game or the Monday night game is a tough one. They came out on the winning end, but I'm going to give the Panthers a little more credit here for what they're able to do at home versus when they're on the road. They look like a different outfit here.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's about it. I realize this is more of my disdain for the Dolphins. I'm going to admit that
There's nothing wrong with that.
no, but that I disdained my disdain for the Dolphins, that I'm taking the Panthers against them in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
pick'em game. It's like I really don't like the Dolphins, but here we are. Here we are.
That's right. Yeah, and I love that we've gone back to back here with the Jets game and the Dolphins game because it allows me to give you all the other stats that are a bit more like applicable to the Dolphins being super lucky to win that game last week, right? Where the Jets 404 to 300 in
Mhm.
total yards. You
Yeah.
get out yardaged by the Jets by 104 yards. Like, come on, you stink. Um, the Dolphins, the specific number, by the way, 13 penalties for 100 yards that the Jets had, and like not forced, right? A lot of unforced penalties here.
Just
And
insane.
then finally, the football was physically on the ground 5 times in that
Mhm.
game on Monday night. How many times did the Dolphins get the fumble luck, happen to have a guy on the ball all 5 times? Right.
Oh,
So the Jets fumble 3 times, the Dolphins fumble twice, but the Dolphins are the ones that get the fumble every single time. Right. And that, as you know, like when the ball's on the ground, that thing is 50-50. Right. That is the coin flip of plays once the football hits the ground. Right. Because the guy fumbling it is often the guy the least likely to be able to recover it because of the way things work, where more defenders are around an offensive player. Right. So the fact that the Dolphins were able to get 2 of their fumbles back and the Jets weren't able to get any of their 3 fumbles back is frankly a fluke. So there I said it, the Dolphins win last week was a fluke, and now you remove Tyreek Hill, the one thing that like forget about the old school idea of like Tyreek Hill being able to catch a 75-yard touchdown pass, right? Like, yeah, it might have happened at some point this season. I think he had one, maybe 2 last year.
mhm.
The Tyreek Hill thing is like he's very elusive and does some weird route running that's
Mhm.
almost impossible to contain. And so when it's third or fourth down, like the Dolphins can extend the drive 2 or 3 times just on that stuff alone.
Yeah.
When he then becomes somebody you do not have to game plan for. I mean, even just specifically to the Panthers, it's J.C. Horn. You go over there on Jaden Wall, and that's just kind of all we need to do. with this Dolphins offense, right? Like it becomes so much easier
Yeah.
when JC Horn can just go onto Jalen Waddle. So um I'm with you, man. Like I listen, I have to cite that as we talked about last week, Carolina wasn't even particularly good in that 31-0 win over the Falcons from like a
Yeah.
box score perspective.
Oh yeah.
It's why we were on the Patriots last week. That
Yep.
was the easiest win imaginable. Didn't have to watch basically after certainly in the second half of that game. And so it's dicey because it's like, yeah, so we don't even get really any points, any meaningful points with the Carolina Panthers. Like, again, arguably the worst team in the league, at least the ones that aren't named the Tennessee Titans. And listen, maybe the Cincinnati Bengals if they don't cover 10.5 points against the Lions. So yeah, I'm with you here, right? Where it's like the Dolphins are bad in the secondary. Ted McMillan can probably do some work in that department. The Jets looked like they were going to be able to run right through the Dolphins. Chuba Hubbard like should be able to maybe do that, right? Like so again, like the Dolphins are getting worse here. Didn't get an upgrade, nor should they, for that win against the Jets. And listen, Carolina's ranked where or rated where Carolina is rated, and it's not any good, but it's why they're a home underdog here. But I also can't get to a number that has Miami at -1.5 because that would require a downgrade further of the Panthers. Again, we
Mhm.
can't go much further, folks.
No.
And an upgrade of the Dolphins. And it's like I watched that game, man. Like there's nothing about the Dolphins that has me worried. Um, again,
Yeah.
they might beat the Panthers. They certainly could beat the Panthers. I don't want to be betting on the Dolphins here going forward.
No. 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 No.
Just
Operation
don't want
is
to do it.
still under Money Mike here, and Money Mike might have bought himself a couple extra weeks, but that's about it here. We move on to talking about
Yeah.
basement dwelling teams here. We move on to the Tennessee Titans, who we've sort of referenced multiple times throughout this pod. And we find them here as 7.5 point underdogs in Arizona against the Cards. Cam Ward, after last week's loss, said, quote, "If we keep it a buck right now, we ass." Close quote. That might be one of the greatest quotes in the history of all quotes. And that was after they were blown out by the Texans, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And I feel as if I've taken them a few times this year and they haven't covered. And now I'm looking at them and why am I on the Titans plus 7.5 points this week? It's more so about the Cards. I think the Cards are a solid team.
Mm.
I really do. And even as bad as I think that the Titans are, I still can't lay the 7.5 with the Cardinals in this one. I just can't. It's just too many points for me here. Even with the we ass team,
Yeah.
maybe there's a bounce back. And I'm hoping that this team will look themselves in the mirror and maybe come up with a
Listen.
performance to keep it somewhat close. But yes, I am plus the points here with the team self-described as we ass. I can't even believe it. You talk about doing things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Living in the uncomfortable, the wee ass discomfort. What? Let's get a proctologist in here ASAP. Listen, at a certain point, the and whether it's the new number one pick rookie quarterback coming in and being like, I got to tell you guys, I've been looking around here and it is not good. Um, there's a reason they had the number one pick last year.
Exactly.
They're terrible last year. They were also not the sneaky, like, oh, they're underrated in the marketplace, but like at least they're going to cover some games. I think they covered like 2 games against the spread last year,
Yeah.
right? Like, and again, they haven't covered yet this year, to the best of my knowledge, right? Or I guess no, I'm sorry, they covered by a half point week 1 against the Denver
The
Broncos, right?
Broncos.
Where
Yes.
again, I think they got into the red zone like one time in that game by the offense's own volition. And honestly, it might even not have been that because they didn't get into the red zone last week. Didn't never got into the red zone. Just
Yeah.
no red zones. So again, like whether it's the market still overrating the Tennessee Titans by constantly putting them in a place that isn't the worst team in the league, despite them finishing worst last year, like eventually you just have to stop like knocking your head up against the wall and be like, you know what? The Titans are just going to have to beat me. Whether that's point spread, whether that's outright, because
Yeah.
I think that is the bigger consideration here. Wink,
Yeah.
wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, again, like it maybe it's just not that fun this year. And I shouldn't say not fun because it means if you're fading the Titans every week, you're surviving. But like, when there's a really bad team that you can just pick on with just about anybody, um, it's not quite as interesting as when there's parity in the league. But there's never parity. Like there always has to be somebody who's god awful.
Yeah.
Well, again, how many games, how many years do we have to watch the Titans before we're just like, yeah, this team is god awful? And last week it was the quote from I believe it was Michael Pittman that we talked about, where they're
Yes.
like, yeah, like we knew we were going to win because like they didn't like in the warm up, it did not appear as they were interested in playing, and like that can manifest itself in two field goal misses when you actually get the ball into field goal range because like again, if the kicker if the whole team isn't vibing, the kicker probably isn't vibing either, right? And we talk all the time about bad teams doing bad team stuff. And it isn't because they can't throw the ball or catch the ball or whatever, because they're in the NFL. It's
Mhm.
an overall organizational issue.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the Cardinals, might not be and probably will never be the, second round of the playoff, conference championship, Super Bowl, whatever deal. But there's at least a level of professionalism
Yeah.
on that team that like especially on a short or on a long week, excuse me, or a medium week or whatever you want to call it when they have the Thursday night game,
Mhm.
back-to-back games at home, having lost last week, there's a professionalism that it's like, yeah, like we're going to be able to throw the ball to Marvin Harrison. We're going to be able who might have a little more confidence after catching a touchdown pass or two last week.
Mhm.
And, Trey McBride is always right. Like it's like there's enough going on with the Cardinals that it's like you should be confident that they're going to win the game. And by the way, if you beat the Titans, you usually cover no matter what the point spread is because they're awful. And by the way, it's not like the Cardinals like market rating has gone out of control because we just saw last week where they were home underdogs to Seattle, the market being down on the Cardinals or really high on Seattle, whichever one you sort of prefer there, right? But they go down and you go, yeah, see, this is the Cardinals, man. They're just not that any good. But then it's like they come back on it and they get that game to a tie. And yeah, they don't win the game, but it's like you can make the case that the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals are about equal.
Yeah.
They were in a 2020 game last week.
Mhm.
And so, meanwhile, Seattle's -3.5 at home against a pretty good Buccaneers team. And so, like, yeah, the Cardinals' number here seems like a lot. And, we talked about with the Colts, and it's like, man, this is a different kind of deal out of your depth, having to cover a big number. I'm not sure anybody's out of their depth when they play the Tennessee Titans. And listen, that might come back to bite me, and the Titans might like put their best foot forward or their backside forward, whatever they want to sort of do here to get a win. But it's like, well, that would have happened at some point
Yeah.
in the last year and a half,
Mhm.
right? And so if Cam Ward has no confidence in the team, and the team doesn't seem to be that interested in playing on a week to week basis. And
Mhm.
we don't think the coach is going to be doing anything like in the weeds,
We know
in
he's
the
not.
crevices, and we know that he's not. Then you're just kind of like, well, yeah, like what am I even kind of worried about here necessarily? Even at a big number of 7.5, like, yeah, I mean, if there's one
So
team to fade as a big number, it's the Titans.
yeah, the pick has been changed, and everything you just said totally true. And you're gonna get the couple games a year where Kyler Murray looks like video game Kyler, not the video games he plays, but like the video game version of where he's really really good. He looks like that guy, and you're like, oh
Kyle of
yeah,
Duty.
he's really really good, Kyler Murray. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You talk yourself into that. Why wouldn't that be against the Titans? And oh yeah, again, the biggest reason why I'm switching this pick. Cam Ward, after last week's loss, said, quote, if we keep it a buck right now, we ass. Close quote.
Man,
Let's move on to
Kyle of
Sunday Night
Duty.
Football
Kyle
here.
of Duty. That's what I'm calling Kyler Murray now.
Ooh, I
Kyle
like that.
Kyle of Duty.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like that a lot.
How has nobody come up with that? Somebody has to have come up with that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Interesting. I do like it though. That can go. That can go.
Well,
Sunday
yeah,
Night
okay.
Football. We got the Patriots at the Bills. Bills 7.5-point favorites here. Josh Allen had to go Superman last week to beat the Saints, not even just cover because they didn't cover, but to beat the Saints last week. The Bills couldn't stop the Saints run game, obviously missing some key guys, and Oliver Milano still out. obviously. But this Pats team, on the other hand, I mean, they look great, but it was against the Panthers. So there's two things going on here. And really,
Yeah.
I'm just taking a bunch of the points because I feel like the Bills should be able to get it done. But that's a lot of points. That's a big ask in prime time. I'm going to be on the Patriots. Give me the points. And I'm going to hope that Drake May continues to look really good because I think he's looked pretty decent this season so far. So give me the points. Patriots plus 7.5.
Yeah, this feels sneaky. And I know it's part of because like the Bills have had this issue, and you mentioned obviously the injured guys, right? And that's I don't even know when they come back if like the Bills defense is that great
To begin with,
when
yeah.
fully healthy. But just like, yeah, like not being able to really pull away, unless I'm not really asking them to cover the spread necessarily, but like they never got a 2-score lead against the Dolphins right up
Mhm.
until the very end, right? And like that's kind of what I'm looking for from, I don't know, a team favored by more than 2 scores, is
Mhm.
to like get the 2-score lead and then hold off the opponent. And
Like, I don't know
so
how much
this game
people
kind
watched
of,
that game. Like the Saints could have won that game. Right. And
they
like
sure could
I think if
have.
you
Yeah.
tell people that, it's like, oh wait, what? It wasn't like oh, we're just keeping it close. Like they could have won the game.
Yeah. No, of course. And that's what I mean. And same thing with the Dolphins the week before,
Mhm.
who
Yeah.
again like come home the next week and get outgained by 100 yards by the Jets. And it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and again, when it comes down to it, it's like, well, if everybody had kind of looked around at that and been like, well, maybe the Dolphins, or excuse me, maybe the Bills shouldn't be rated that high, that's fine. And I think the rating has taken a bit of a hit because it's like, all right, let's give the Bills sort of a fighting chance here to cover some of these numbers. And maybe that's because there will be interest in the Patriots, right? Where you can make the number 7.5 when people want to take plus 7.5. You have to make the number 16 against the Saints when people are not really all that excited about even taking plus 16 or plus
Mhm.
12.5 against the Dolphins. So, maybe the Patriots winning that game again against a crappy Panthers team. Listen, their rating is pretty high here. Like it's back to um, above league average,
Yeah.
which is like, I
Yeah.
don't know, man. Like that seems like a lot. It's more just kind of like, wow, the Bills again haven't stretched any of these leads against like far worse teams. So yeah, like if something kind of weird happened here and the Patriots kind of maybe pulled off an upset,
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna happen, but it's like wouldn't be the craziest thing I've ever seen because again, like even going back 2 games, right? Like the Patriots beat themselves in week 2.
Yeah.
And whatever you want to call the Dolphins, like going on the road and getting that win, or sorry, that was week 2, but going on, they should have beat the Steelers in week 3, and they did go on the road to get that week 2 win. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe the Patriots are, if they just don't fumble the ball away, kind of very Jetsy, but if they just don't fumble the ball away, maybe they are an above average team. And if they're an above average team here, the way that the Bills have kind of been low key mid in these last couple of home games,
Mhm.
then yeah, like maybe there's a shot here for the Patriots, even potentially outright.
Yeah, a lot of points there. A lot of points there. I will gladly gobble up those points with the Pats. One last game here as we try to wrap things up. We got the Chiefs as 3.5 point favorites on Monday Night Football in Jacksonville, taking on the Jags. And your man's Liam Cohen pretending as if he wanted to fight Robert Saleh after the game was hilarious to me. And one of the greatest, like, hold me back moves outside of the NBA that we've seen in a very long time. Either way,
Outside of the NBA.
show me the lie. Show me the lie.
I know. I love. I wasn't ready for it, but you're right. You're not wrong.
The Jags with the win, though, but this is a weight class to me. I'm
Yeah.
not buying the Jags. I'm just not.
Okay.
A lot of takeaways. I think that game was more about the Niners and the Niners just making mistakes and shooting themselves in the foot last week. Uh, Worthy back for Mahomes and company looked pretty good. Patrick Mahomes with more weapons.
Mhm.
Who knew that might be a thing? 3.5 points on the road is a tough
Mhm.
ask, but I will lay said 3.5 points because I will firmly believe that the Jags are frauds.
It's harsh on a Jags team, as we talked about. Could be 4-0 here with, honestly, if Brian
I
Thomas,
know, I
who
know.
theoretically was one of the best receivers in the league last year, if he just catches the ball
Mhm.
that hits him right in the chest in that was week 2. Yeah, I'll put it this way, man. Like, this is more about the Chiefs and what your sort of belief system is relative to, I don't know, actual
Reality.
facts and numbers, which is like, which is when the Chiefs are rated in the high 60s, they rarely cover because it creates numbers like 3.5 on the road against a team who I think is actually a pretty good team.
Mhm.
So you can tell me that like the Jags are frauds. I don't know, man. They beat your 49ers pretty good last week. Like, let's
I
hope
also
that
think the
that
Niners are
team is,
frauds.
at least they're all fraud. Everyone, you're a fraud, and you're a fraud. I don't know why I went to a Jimmy Stewart voice there. Clarence. Um, no, like this is the old Chiefs rating, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. I'm with
Chiefs
you.
rating of the last couple weeks. Yeah, Chiefs rating of the last couple weeks is like in the mid to low 50, mid to high 50s, excuse me, and it means under a touchdown to the Giants in a game
Mhm.
that was pretty dicey. And then, yeah, they get Xavier Worthy back, and like, does that unlock the universe? Like, yeah, it appears to, for one game against a Ravens team that we just talked about, all the Ravens injuries, especially on defense,
Mhm.
that they've had. I have a fundamental problem with the fact that Andy Reid, unless I'm not going to teach Andy Reid how to coach football, like, why is Kareem Hunt getting 13 carries against the Ravens defense? Right? Why is Pacheco going for 7 for 35, 5 yards per carry, when Kareem Hunt is getting 2.5 to 3 yards per carry? Like,
Yeah.
what is the deal, man? And so, again, when you got banged up Ravens and you're dealing with like that whole situation, I'm just, put it this way: they had Xavier Worthy last year unlocking stuff, and they would just win by 3 points every game.
Mhm.
Right. And so, like, yeah, if their rating is such that we're getting an extra half point here, or maybe even an extra full point, then like I'm gonna have to take that point and fully expect the the Chiefs to be tested for 3 quarters,
Yeah.
make the one extra play that Patrick Mahomes makes over the
Mhm.
opposing quarterback, versus the opposing quarterback, or of course the defense, and then run out the clock with a 3 point win. That's just kind of what's going to happen, right?
We've
Or at least
seen
that's
this
the thing,
before.
maybe.
Yes.
You're right. That's not in, it doesn't need to be that specific, but like, there's also a possibility the Jaguars just win the game, because the Jaguars actually think are a pretty good team. And again, their rating is such that they are being lumped in with the Texans, with the Patriots all of a sudden, with the Steelers, with the Vikings, with the
Yeah, yeah.
Buccaneers, right? And it's like, yeah, again, we were told that the Liam Cohen era was going to be something, and they're 3-1. Could be 4-0. Hasn't
Mhm.
been pretty. Rarely is. But, at least that's something. And so Monday night in Duval, then, we're probably going to get that same Chiefs game that we always get, where they do just enough to win. Or maybe they don't.
I hear
Maybe
you.
they don't.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And of course, we know that the Monday night action will be part of a bunch of the other stuff that you do across the
You got it.
NFL, providing the coverage all over the place. But where can the people find you, my dude, to find all the information that you have between now and obviously kickoff?
Yeah, thanks, pal. Like that specifically, there will be, as there is every Monday for Yahoo Sports, a Monday Night Football betting preview, Chiefs and Jaguars, as you mentioned. Same sort of deal over on my Substack, The Window. Type in The Window sports betting, you're gonna find it. Type in Matt Russell sports betting, Matt Russell The Window, whatever you want to type in over on your Substack app or website. You get notifications straight to your phone, or you get the newsletter sent right to your inbox. So we'll have the Thursday night preview. We have college football best bets, the Saturday 7, and then a ton of stuff, obviously NFL betting for Sunday, player props, all of that good stuff. And like I said, for Yahoo Sports for Monday's game, we also, get notified for that as well through the Substack. So you don't have to go searching for that either. Everything comes straight to your phone and your inbox. So just swing through there, and we get you set up.
So much to talk about, obviously, between now and then, as there will be more injury updates, I'm sure, and just a whole lot going on in the NFL as we are in the thick of things now. with it being week 5. Of course, you can follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Sheldon Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And of course, as I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. Like, follow, and subscribe, all that other fun stuff. We'll be back next week because, as always, we are unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.